And we are live again. It is Sunday. This is Highly Articulated. I am Adam, as it says down in the bottom corner there, of course. Because I'm not bored of it yet, we're going to talk a little bit more about PulseCon. My guest today, I was scheduled. Schedules haven't lined up in the last little bit. He's been on before, but he's always a pleasure to have.
Hi,
Christopher Diagnostik 80 McLeod from the Full Force Podcast. What's going on?
Not much, buddy. Just, hanging out with you right now and excited to chat.
Just I can't even remember if PulseCon was last week or 2 weeks ago. It just feels like it's just like the fog of all of it is still still around. Like it hasn't lifted yet.
I also have to apologize for not being on your show on that weekend that I was supposed to be on because I got pulled away to something else, which maybe we can talk about later.
You can talk about it now if you want, if you're willing to divulge.
Oh, well, yeah, I ended up going out for like food and drinks with some of the Hasbro team, Travis from A Toy Kind of Mood, and Chris from Disney. So we had Chris from Disney, Lenny and Tony from Hasbro, from the Joe team in actual fact as well, and Travis from A Toy Kind of Mood. It was amazing. So Travis was down from California for the weekend, and he messaged me and said, yeah, I want to try and get everyone together for something. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And it just had, so unfortunately, the timing didn't quite work out. I thought I was going to be able to squeeze it all in. I was there and I was like, I'm not going to be able to get away just this second. We were in Providence, which was like about 10 or 15 minute drive from where I live. And it just didn't happen. But it was fun. We had a good time it was just a good laugh, lots of fun chat. And it was quite surreal still, even though I've done that a few times now with the Hasbro guys. But yeah, it's getting a little bit friendly now, which I'm... which might be affecting my my viewpoint of everything.
Your objectivity.
Like I ever had any. I think I've been described recently as king of the shills, which I think is hilarious and needs some sort of like meme / Photoshop job on it, I think.
I mean, credit where credit is due. I mean, I think by the average I don't know how to really the negative fans would probably characterize me in that shill category as well. They use that term pretty loosely. I don't know that they quite understand the definition of it, but on some level, you should take it, I think, as a compliment, because it's if people are referring to you as the king of anything,
yep,
they're recognizing you and they're giving you credit. So
I'll take it. I'll take it as I cry myself to sleep on my Hasbro pillow, on my G.I. Joe pillow.
I mean, you mentioned G.I. Joe pillow. I still have Star Wars bed sheets that surprisingly my amazing, beautiful wife allows me to have.
I've got my Action Force International Heroes cushions that I sit on. Let me just put that back. There we go.
Now, to your credit, I will mention this because I was like, no, you're bonkers. You messaged me and said, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. I'm not going to make it home. Is it okay if I just remote in on my phone? And I said, we'll reschedule. We can do this another time. It doesn't matter. We're just going to talk about toys. It's not like,
I did feel bad. So I know Smiler67 saying it's a BS excuse, but you're right. It is 100%. But it wasn't even like that came up before, like after Adam had asked me to be on. It was like, I can do this in a day.
I can fit it all in.
I can do that thing in the morning with Kate. I can do that thing in the afternoon with the guys, and then I can do that thing in the evening with Adam. And it was like, no, that's not technically how life works anymore, is it really? It's like, when you get to our age, it's one thing at a time, and then that's it. Then you're done forever.
I was going to say this, the amount of stuff that I used to be able to fit into a day, I don't know how I used to do it. It was just like, it was bang, 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 bang. And I think part of it was because when we're younger, we're more selfish and we don't really worry about now it's sort of
Yep.
like, okay, how is this going to inconvenience everybody else in my life?
Yep.
Rather than I want to do it and it sounds like fun, so I'm going to do it.
I remember doing things like I'd play basketball in the morning, and then we'd go for like somewhere to eat or something, and then it would be like out that night doing something else or clubbing or whatever. And I'm just like, I go back to, I think about those days and I think there's no way I could do even one of those things anymore. Like
you would just be tired.
Just be destroyed after getting out of bed, just being like, yeah, there goes the back, there go the knees, there go the ankles. Yeah, forget about it.
Larry's here as well. What's going on, Larry? Larry was watching when I was going through. I did all of the PulseCon sort of reveals in one video, which is probably more than I should have done. I didn't know any of the Transformers. It like of all the reveals, I was like, and this is another Transformer. Larry was gracious enough to kind of message me and be like, hey, here's a few pointers on who these guys were.
These are Decepticons. These are Autobots.
We'll start at the beginning. Larry said I was able to secure 4 Serpentors, so I'll be called a scalper soon.
Yeah, you're a scalper. Yeah. We're shills.
I got a couple. I've learned my lesson because I anytime I can get extras. So like anytime there's a PulseCon exclusive and it's max 2, I order 2. I only keep 1, but there's always somebody that's gonna miss it. I generally sell them for what I pay for them. So if somebody missed them, I'll reach out and be like, okay, hey, did you get one? Yeah, okay, I'll move on to the next person. Did you get one, sort of thing?
Yeah.
I learned my lesson of like posting the extras because you get dumped on by people, Larry. So I know what you mean. Tyler asks, okay, here's the real question, Chris. Did you cover the tab or did someone else? Because if you didn't, you can call all Adams. You can miss all. Yeah, okay.
Well, what we did was because I didn't actually have a lot, and they were all drinking. I don't drink, you see, so I was on water all night.
That's why they invited you. You have to DD everybody.
Yeah, usually. Well, they'd have like one. Most of them were driving, but I wasn't drinking, so I didn't have that to think about. I think I shared a couple of apps with Travis when we got there, and then we were waiting for everyone else to turn up. So when everyone turned up, they all had like fish and chips and stuff. I think in honor of me being there, which is quite adorable. And I was unfortunately, it doesn't come in newspaper. It just on a plate. What is this? So I kind of like wasn't necessarily supposed to pick anything up, but then I quite graciously covered the apps while everyone else split the bill. So I figured I'd do something, and ended up doing more than I needed to. And they were, everyone they wanted to. It was one of those things where it was like, you get the little black wallet with the check in it and everything, and it was just stuffed full of credit cards, about 12 credit cards in there. And the poor guy had to go off and be like, right, so $2 on this, $630 on that one. Yeah, it was
trying to keep track of all that. It was I've worked in restaurants, and that was always like, you always say, okay, how are we splitting this? And you hope that they just say like, oh, I got it, because it takes so long to like make sure that everybody's charged the right amount and all that kind of stuff.
It's a nightmare. It is a nightmare. But yeah, that was easy. Everyone's very gracious and they all want to pay for everything as well. So yeah, it's hard.
Now we won't ask. We won't get into the specifics of what may or may not have been discussed. I can assume
here was everything. Here's the list.
Yeah. But we will at the end, we will get into your question on the GI Joe brand panel. But first, we're going to start off with show and tell. A couple things that we picked up this week, and then we are going to go over the PulseCon stuff. And then you and I are going to give our top 3 most wanted figures that still haven't been made, which is hard to believe. They've made so many different characters, and yet we can still pick 3.
I thought the line was done. According to the fandom, it's over and classified.
Oh, it's dead. Finished. It's dead. Yeah, and Hasbro's imploding in upon itself, and everybody's quitting the line. Nobody wants the toys anymore. So
weird. Some things aren't lining up.
So we've got 3 that we still want. We'll probably never see them on account of Serpentor being the last figure that ever comes out. But Did you pick anything up this week?
I've picked a few things up, none of which are around me. Oh no, one is actually technically right next to me, but I can't really go into a lot of details. But you may just see over my shoulder, underneath Megatron, is a cheeky early version copy. It's production sample of, not even a sample. It's the figure. It's Bumblebee or Striker with Stalker. Now, I can't go into a lot of details, obviously, but I am doing a video for them very soon. And it's done. I'm just waiting on their approval, and I say I'm waiting on their approval. I'm waiting on them to kind of be like, yeah, we are clear to launch now, because they've still got they've just sent these out to like a small cadre, I believe, of all the standard marketing maneuver that every company does. All of the big like names get them, and me.
The king shills, the queen shills,
the queen shills, yeah. The prince shills, the princess shills, the lord shill. Anyway, enough. So yeah, not saying I'm a big fish or anything, because I'm not, but I'm very fortunate and very lucky to know BMAC and the Transformers team and the G.I. Joe team, and they've hooked me up again. And and I was like, yeah, absolutely, this is amazing. Thank you very much. Lots of fun, but I can't really go into many more details. But that I picked up recently.
One question.
Yes.
When that was sort of revealed and you sort of chatted about it on your channel, you sort of thought, okay, Bumblebee as an awe striker, out of the box, in hand, is that still your feeling, or was it more fun than you expected?
No, I do. It's definitely more fun than I expected. Two, I do say in the video, even though I shouldn't be saying this, I do mention that that hasn't changed in my opinion. I feel like it's difficult, isn't it? I can talk about this because I can talk on this because we've seen them and everything.
Yeah.
Megatron and His Tank works to a degree, right? Because it's two iconic characters that, Megatron has been a tank, so it's totally acceptable that he can be a His Tank. And that makes sense. Also, the fact that, when you transform him, you get lots of that silver, which is hidden on the vehicle mode incredibly well. And then when you actually transform him, he's mostly silver.
Yeah.
It is or mostly grey.
The grey,
it is incredible that they did that. It's like, it is a bit of a difficult transformation, but it is a lot of fun. With Bumblebee and the Awe Striker, it's difficult because when you're looking at two iconic things across two brands, you want to have as much natural crossover as possible. And there isn't natural crossover between Bumblebee and the Awe Striker, because the Awe Striker is effectively a dune buggy and it's green. So straight away, you're making it very difficult, especially when the other thing is with an Awe Striker, there's not much there that you can use as transformation, because the roof bar elements are so skinny, and basically it's negative space. So, which is kind of like, really difficult for a transformer. Real transformers, it's really difficult for them to operate in negative space. So there's that aspect where there's not that not a lot to work with. But what that does do is it scales the figures nicely, and you'll see that in the video of how that, because I was thinking they were all just going to be the same size across the board. Isn't the case. I won't go into too much more detail, but they scale well.
So smaller than Megatron. That Megatron is quite large.
Huge. Same size box. And obviously it's funny because there's still like a lot of Bumblebee. There's still a lot going on. But for somehow there's a difference in that size. And it's good.
AI Collectibles, Aaron just wanted to stop in and say hi. We'll catch the replay.
We're not going to say anything now, AI, so that when you go and watch this back, we'll just be silent for the rest of the episode.
You've seen the good part. Anything else? Was there?
Still, I will say, as a king of the shills, I still absolutely love it. And it's not even just that like free thing element of like, oh, you get a free thing. It's considering I put then like, a whole couple of days worth of editing and video recording and lots of on-camera different. There's a lot goes into it. It's not just one of those things where I'm, give me a free toy and then I'll never say anything about it again. It is definitely a lot of fun, and I do love the line. I think it's really cool that we're getting this Transformers GI Joe crossover thing. It's just awesome.
I was gonna say, I know that you were excited about these. You would have purchased these otherwise. So it's not.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. So shill away. I don't think.
Netflix and shill. Just call me Shillery.
I get that. I got to figure out how to change people's names in this, because I feel like there's a way, and I could have edited it, but I'm not that clever. So
Shillery Swank. You could have changed my name, so it was Shillery Clinton. Would have been a good one.
Anything else? Did you pick up anything? Did you pick? I'm sure you probably picked up PulseCon stuff, but nothing that's delivered.
Never. Nothing is ever delivered. It's all. I've collected some great pre-orders. Well, actually, the funny thing is, I've kind of switched my buying habits now, because obviously I've got friends in the UK in demand toys. They get a lot of that stuff very early, just being official retailers, and unfortunately, the GI Joe line is going Pulse exclusive, so that's changing slightly. But in demand toys still get import stock, so thankfully that isn't completely cut off for myself. But I know a lot of people are getting that. Sorry, someone just mentioned something. Larry's mentioned something in the comments that I just wanted to say. This is what the point I was getting to before, was the crossover of iconic characters. Obviously, the Ore Striker is probably the most iconic vehicle of that size, with the GI Joe team, for like what Bumblebee is, a small road vehicle. So Beachcomber 100% is a perfect match for the Ore Striker, or the Eco Striker. Even more of a perfect match of the Eco Striker, which I could see them doing that in the future. And I would be like, yes, please, give me a Beachcomber, repaint it, give me a Eco Warriors Flint or something, or Ozone or something. 100% down for that. And then redo Megatron as the Toxo Hiss, or the septic tank, and have like Cesspool or something with it. You see, that's where, like, if you give it time, that's where you get that stuff. And then you could have, I think someone did it as like it's either Banzai-tron, or it might have just been like another like G2 Megatron or something, like Megatron again, but just in crazier, ridiculous colors. So again, I'd be all over that. But Beachcomber, unfortunately, as a character, is well known in the Transformers fandom, is well known in the toy, like the peripheral, nerd fandom. But beyond that, like Beachcomber, people don't really know who Beachcomber is. We do. And also, Warpath would have been a good one with a Mobat, Mobat. Sorry, no, it is Mobat, isn't it? Yeah, of course it is. Or the Mauler. Warpath would be perfect for either of those. Bit big though. And then we know Power Glide's been used in the past. We know for the Rattler bit in red. We know that Hound has been used as a vamp. So that I could see them doing Hound as a vamp at some point, right?
Yeah.
But still, that's after you've done the big guns. So we've got to get through Megatron, Bumblebee. I'm sure we're going to get like Prime. I don't know about Starscream, because obviously you get the vehicles get much bigger.
What about Jetfire as a Sky Striker?
Yes, well, because we've had that too. We've had that too with the crossovers, haven't we? Yeah, of course. Sorry. I went a bit like crazy there, because when you said Jetfire, all I could think of was the Michael Bay movie. Even though I love Jetfire, and AKA Skyfire, and that original like figure. I was another cracking Christmas. That I had, and I remember getting that figure, and just like I remember it vividly, like inside it was in like the kind of polystyrene shape, kind of like inside the box. You slid that out, and it was like cut into the polystyrene. I remember it vividly, like feel it, like tactile memory of it.
Squeaks as you pull it out.
Yeah. Anyway, so sorry, I just had a brain fart, and I was thinking Jetfire from the movie where he was in all black would probably be better as a Night Raven, and I'm thinking, of course, Jetfire, you idiot. Sorry, you're right.
They did. I think he was in the modern line in a San Diego Comic-Con box set.
Absolutely, yeah. They've done Starscream. Right? They've done Jetfire. They've done Hound. They've done all sorts. A lot of his tanks as well. Soundwave, Shockwave, and I think there's more, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. Anyway, carry on.
Tyler says it's possible for Hasbro Joe team to release the Transformers Joe collab retro figure separately. I think so. I mean, it's their rules. I would presume that they could. Now, will they or not? I don't know. That O-ring line seems to be moving at a glacial pace. We don't get a lot of reveals. We'll probably mention that when we sort of get into the PulseCon stuff. I was surprised.
I would say Glacial's pace nowadays. No, in the old days.
Previous,
now it's at that's. I'd take
classifieds moving at glacial pace now.
I would take that pace right now of current glacial maneuvers.
Captain Colonel Collector, who is of course Patty. Anyway, we could get a Tiger or Transformer for the Sergeant Savage crossover.
Transformer for the Sergeant Savage. I'm trying to think of what you could do. Sergeant Savage had that tank, didn't they? And that really cool like P-40 Warhawk.
I was going to say the P-40 would be the way that I think they could go.
Wasn't there a tank that was cancelled? I'm sure it was the one that was going to come with that Night Force hit and run, even though it wasn't Night Force hit and run. It was just hit and run was going to be used as the tank driver, and it was in black and green. And everyone was like, ooh, that would make for a really cool Night Force hit and run. And then in the future, Club did a Night Force hit and run. But that's what I'm talking about. I'm sure and it might have been in Extreme. I think it was Sergeant Savage, though. Correct me if I'm wrong. Someone will know.
I don't know. Larry said it's a Bandai issue with Skyfire, so that's Transformer stuff right over my head. I don't know.
I know Harmony something? I forget the name of the company, but didn't they sued Hasbro for the use of the artwork and the bio card for Jetfire because on that crossover set, because they still had the rights for the artwork and Hasbro weren't aware of that, and they used it and they put it on the card, and lo and behold, boom, you got sued. So that was an issue with Skyfire, Jetfire. Anyway, that's irrelevant. Sorry, guys, carry on.
Still toys. I don't know. It gets muddy, right? Like what's going on, Ray? How's it going?
Figgy Smalls, great name.
Yeah. Patty said P-40. Yes, the tank was canceled, I believe.
I knew fully well I was just trying to come across really intelligent and knowledgeable, and then be like, humble at the same time.
Just patronize. Wasn't it? And go into like crazy unknown detail.
Wasn't it like cancelled? It was that tank that had these Yeah, like come on, McLeod, get a grip.
And didn't it have this very specific detail that was related to this other thing?
Anyway, enough of me being knowledgeable about things. So cringe, isn't it? Sorry. I really am king of the shills. Carry on.
I'd be right there if anybody was paying attention, but that's neither here nor there. I got a couple of these guys. SH Figuarts Dragon Ball. So it's the what are they called? It's the SH Figuarts Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Vegeta. They have crazy names.
Easy to remember.
And then Android 17, which
SH Figuarts makes some amazing figures. I've got their Turtles figures, and they're really
so much fun. Like I don't know about the Turtles, but the Dragon Ball stuff, like just the extra face plates, the extra hands, like they're just so much fun to pose and play with, and the articulation's fantastic.
Good weight to them as well. Good, like they feel like they exist.
They're nicely balanced. You're absolutely right. Like some of the poses you put them in, you're like, there's never gonna stand up, but they balance them so well that you put it down and
head. Yeah.
Sure enough, they stand up. So, Patty says SHF is never a dull product. So fun. Yeah, it's. I sort of recently got into the Figuarts line, and like the Figuarts stuff, the Mafex stuff, some of the import stuff is just bananas. I mean, they're doing some of the Joes that they're doing from some of those lines too is pretty amazing too. I haven't gone that route yet, but who knows? The other thing that I picked up because it popped up and I had told myself I wasn't going to get it, but largely because I didn't want that 4-pack. I didn't really care for the Dazzler. I didn't really care for the weird little cartoony Wolverine figurine
not
that's not
like
even like an
Hasbro?
articulated toy. But I picked up the single release Mojo.
Amazing.
It's so fun. It's so cool. I'm very happy that I picked it up.
Outstanding.
Especially since Long Shot it got announced. That was part of it. That's sort of what pushed me over the edge, is that I could get this single carded and Long Shot single carded, which were the two that I really wanted from that 4-pack, for like ridiculously less than what that 4-pack is.
So
I
dope.
don't know why that price point is what it is on that 4-pack, but I don't have to worry about that anymore. So
I am, funnily enough, I got into, I mean, I was into X-Men before that, but I remember vividly a holiday special comic that was done in the UK, kind of like on the like slightly bigger size kind of comic size things, kind of like the oversized UK ones. Marvel did a lot of them. And I remember that it was a Mojo World story. So I was kind of, introduced at that point, I think, to Long Shot and Psylocke and loads of other kind of characters that
Spiral was probably in there.
Spiral, yeah, absolutely, and Mojo, of course. And I remember like that issue just being like, just literally read it back and forth. Loved the artwork, thought it was dope. I think Jim Lee was on it mostly, and I remember that just being like one of the ones as a kid I was like, just super into, and but then obviously I watched the cartoon and everything, but for some reason that was like my introduction to Mojo World and all that kind of stuff. It was really cool.
I think that, I mean, that was, and we'll get very much into this when we get into the PulseCon stuff too, but like the Jim Lee era of X-Men was sort of the era that I basically got into it and fell in love with. Almost all of my Legends figures are like Jim Lee era, either X-Men characters or sort of decos of the X-Men characters. There's a few like Age of Apocalypse. The current House of X, that's like the current X-Men is interesting to me, so I bought those figures as well. But the Jim Lee stuff, like just how vibrant the figures were, or the characters were in terms of deco, in terms of design, and then how absurd they got with stuff like Mojo, like, yeah,
definitely.
Patty says, I feel Toys R Us Canada is consulting on Hasbro Pulse pricing. Toys R Us in Canada, if you weren't aware, is charging ridiculous amounts for toys these days. They've sort of taken a different business model where they are not going after us as customers anymore. They're going after the people that are going in to grab a birthday present or something like that are going to be in and out and aren't going to be aware that a G.I. Joe classified figure should be about $35, not $45.
I was just being your graphics there for a second. Look,
that's a great hat. Kate got you that and a bunch of others. Hey, your lovely wife.
She certainly did.
There's I can't remember what they were. There was a mask.
Inhumanoids, Mask, and Kung Fu Grip were the other ones.
Larry says Marvel should have waited a year before release the single figs. They are leaving money on the table. Maybe that's why they lay off all the employees. Well, I mean, I think
I can tell you why that's happened. Really, I mean, I don't need to tell you. Really, it's just basic, terrible corporate, short-sightedness. Really, it's the threat of investor pullout. Really. Which they just want that bottom line. They just want looking better for them, and a quick and easy way of doing that, unfortunately, is crapping on, a lot of the employees. And there were a lot of people let go in California, I believe, in the California kind of area, but there were some names that also went in this kind of side of the country as well. And it really sucks. It's awful. But what some people might not know, and this isn't the case all the time and for every employee, but they'll often rehire again shortly afterwards, or they will just use the same people but on a freelance basis for a long period of time. And it kind of it sucks for the employee, but it also sucks for Hasbro, and they don't even realize. Well, they do realize it, but it's that short term blip, so they can be like, here are the numbers, and the investors don't get worried. That's really all it is. And unfortunately, it's like I said, it's short-sighted. It's something I don't agree with. It's something that upsets me on a huge level. A lot of people will call me a shill and that kind of stuff for Hasbro. That's not really the case. I'm a shill for the G.I. Joe brand or the G.I. Joe team or the Transformers toys, the toys. But the people that create them, that make them, that do that kind of stuff. I'm not a fan of corporate America, but I'm also a person that lives in reality, and I understand how that works, how life works. And unfortunately, it's really crap. And I wish it wasn't that way. And like I said, I'm against that fully. And I said that on the weekly with Pat. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be praising Hasbro as a company. That's not what we do anyway. We praise the product that's created by the company via some amazingly talented and hardworking and passionate individuals.
Yeah, and without getting too deep into the thick of it, before we went on, we were even discussing just how complicated it is that they're a publicly traded company, whereas the smaller boutique companies and sort of the independently owned. We were talking about Lego, which is still owned by the family, and how they're sort of able to do things that somebody like Hasbro isn't, just because
they make more money than all human life.
There's that
combined.
Too.
Yeah.
But they're not accountable to anybody. So if they make a decision, it's theirs to make, and they don't have to sort of run it up through the channels, and they don't have to have a meeting, and they don't have to do a call about it. And
Lego might as well be Big Pharma. It might as well be. I wouldn't be surprised if you went into the political landscape and there were Lego representatives in
Denmark. There probably is.
Yeah, they probably run the country.
More or less. They built the Capitol building.
Yeah.
They could have.
Yeah, Lego is insane.
It's made out of Lego, but that's. I thought that was a great joke, but it didn't quite land, so I had to explain.
Amazing. I thought it was great.
Anyway, let's get into a very abridged sort of overview of what we got from PulseCon. Very abridged because I don't want to look like an idiot talking about Transformers again. But we got name reveals for Hawk. Now it's sort of still up in the air. A lot of people are saying they refer to him as Hawk, not General Hawk, inferring that might mean the first version 1, version 1.5, if you prefer the swivel arm version.
Yeah.
I could see that because they've been doing a lot of the version 1s. They would easily be able to just use a buck that they've already got, put a new head sculpt, different deco, and it's kind of an easy way around a virtually zero new tooled figure. I think it's probably more likely that we get the version 2, aka General Hawk version 1.
Yep.
Which is in the center there with the bomber coat, the helmet. I think that's the most iconic look.
Agreed.
The version General Hawk version 2 or version 3 of Hawk, with the rocket backpack and the missiles, I think is a really fun one, and I would love to see that
Insane.
one.
Love it.
But that might be too much. That might be sort of more of a deluxe.
I think personally, if they're doing Hawk, right, I think it all hinges on when we find out the information of what level or what format the figure is. Either if it's mainline standard, your normal classified figure, right, like retail, I think version 2 is going to be the one they go for. If it's like a deluxe or it's like a figure with something, etc., then it's probably going to be the V1 version with like an MMS or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I would suggest in that arena, because if you do the version 1 Hawk just as a mainline, then you're kind of going, we don't need to do a deluxe one, or it's easier for them not to do a deluxe one, if that makes sense. So I don't know, maybe it's like a bit of forced kind of logic, but I would suggest that if it's going to be standard mainline, then it would probably be the V2, because that's the most iconic one. That's the one that people are
Yeah.
going to see on the shelves if they're not G.I. Joe fans and be like, I know that guy. I recognize that figure.
Yeah.
I used to watch the cartoon and General Hawk was on it. So yeah, 100%. You're not going to look at the version 1 and be like, yeah, that's just the same generic green shirt, OG 13 kind of, you know. And no disrespect to anyone who like that is their, because my one is my General Hawk would have, and I say that in terms of my age, is the V2. But I do love that Rocket Pack one is insanely good.
Yeah.
I'd be all over that, like me on food, 100%.
You make a good point about sort of a with vehicle that we could sort of get for the version 1. And sort of when it gets announced, they could do both too, right? We could see a retro carded version 1 Hawk and sort of a standard release.
Yeah, they could just reuse the head sculpt again, and then the rest of it, like you say, can just be reused parts from, like, I don't know, Stalker maybe, or whoever, Breaker, or whoever they've got out, Grunt maybe, because obviously they're doing Grunt as well that we know of.
And I was going to say that too, is that, you know, with Grunt, you know, we haven't seen any sort of reveals or anything either, so we're all assuming it'll be sort of version 1 of Grunt, which again is sort of already a buck that we have. So
one thing I will say is that Rock and Roll was no version of anything that I've ever seen in my life. As much as but I will say, I will preface this by saying I think it's an amazing looking figure, and I really love what they've done with him. It's not really the version 1, and it's not really version 2. It's, in fact, it's nowhere near version 2. But there's this kind of like a lot of, it's like a very adapted, updated version 1, and I think that's a good idea, honestly, because they can repaint it for a retro, and that just makes so much more sense now when you look at it through that lens. It's like, now I get it. I get why that might be that way designed, because we can get this again in a retro card back, and they can just redeco it, and it's exactly what they need it to be.
And I wonder too, like, now that we've sort of gotten the news that, you know, the retro bubble card may continue to exist.
Yeah.
That the retro that we thought was going to end with the Snake Eyes and Crimson Guard, we thought that was going to be the end of it, and they were moving on to something else. But they've said, well, maybe not just yet.
Well, that's the thing. They have just not denied it at all. Like, every question I've posed about it, it's always been the same answer. It's well, you know, if we want to do this in the future, and it's like, well, that just means you are, because otherwise you'd say you weren't
just
doing
say no.
it. You just say you weren't doing it, which is great. And I understand why they do it, and I get that a lot. You know, I completely understand how they have to be sometimes. And this is the thing, like, I don't like hang out with Lenny and he tells me everything. That is not what happens, by the way. Yeah. And I would also say, look, when we sat down for dinner that night, I was joking about some of the things I knew was coming, and they still remain tight-lipped about everything. So, like, that's the thing. They're never going to, like I say, the information I get is not from Hasbro. Okay, can I just make that very clear? Information I receive is either, and if anything ever comes from Hasbro, then it's under NDA, and I will not mention anything about it. If anything does ever come out, it's because I got it elsewhere. So and that elsewhere, and usually it, like, you know, is closer to source, shall we say? But anyway, carry on. Sorry.
The other sort of preview show, this was like Friday morning. I should have mentioned that off the top. Like, these weren't even during the panel. This was like people are hearing about this. The other one was Tripwire. I mentioned that these are preview because I just happened to be watching this because I was up with my kids, having my coffee in the morning. These names got dropped, and I was like, hang on, wait a minute. Like, this is like G.I. Joe's tomorrow. Like, what is? I didn't expect anything from this preview. And then I posted in a Facebook group, in the Northern Outpost Facebook group. I said, hey, they just name announced Hawk and Tripwire. And people were like, what? No, like, what's your source? And I was like, Hasbro said it. I don't, like, I'm not pulling this out of nowhere. Like, this is literally public knowledge. I just happened to be watching it.
Someone said that the other day when I posted about the layoffs, and someone said, are you sure this has happened? Because what's your source? I went, Hasbro. I'm talking to people at Hasbro. Like, that was like, you know, I thought that would be quite obvious in what I posted, but no, it was like, what article are you getting this from? Because I haven't seen anything up yet. I'm like, well, because it's just happened. But anyway, it's funny when people, and that's fair enough, because, you know, you're in a a world now where you can just say anything and people will accept it. So I don't blame people for that. I just thought it was funny. Sometimes when you get like checked on it by someone that maybe doesn't follow you, and it's like, well, got a decent track record, I guess.
And when you have the source, that's great. It's more when sort of like an anonymous thing said, and because it has happened, like
Loads.
Recently, right? There has been people that have said, "Oh, this is coming in the line," and it just doesn't come.
Yep.
And nobody really calls them on it. And so I could totally understand why people are skeptical. I think I said, Hasbro just announced this, and somebody was like, "Where's your source?" And I was like, "Well,
clues in the post."
But again, like the Hasbro layoffs, it's like, what would you gain from
zero
misinformation about layoffs on it?
And we weren't even the first people to post about it. Hilariously enough, it was What's on Joe Mind that posted it initially. But I was getting the information, but didn't want to say anything. I was kind of like, well, this is a little bit private.
Yeah.
Then it was posted, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just put like a commiseration style situation out. You know how it is. It's difficult to gauge the temperature of certain situations. It's not easy. It's not one of those things where you just let's just post everything, because that gets you in trouble. It gets your reputation a little bit marred sometimes. So yeah, I'd rather just report on what's actually happening effectively. Yeah. Sorry, carry on again.
Tripwire presumably will get version 1. I think if in the standard line, I could very much see a pre-paint, a Tiger Force pre-paint.
Very much so, yeah.
The fact that Hasbro sort of did the name drop makes me think that it's probably more likely that we would see the standard release version first, because I don't think they've name dropped any of the characters that have been pre-paints, have they?
Let me think.
They've only just started that recently, so I don't know. Maybe it's just not.
None of those digital renders were pre-paints, whether they're all standard designs, Copperhead, Torpedo, Rock and Roll, etc., etc. They're all a shipwreck. They're as you would expect them to be.
Yeah.
Zorana, Crimson Guard, and Dusty were all as you'd expect. And other than that, that was about the first time they started doing the pipeline reveals, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, or the sit down at breakfast chatting just before you start work reveals is what I like to call it. Emily, I was thinking about doing this character reveals, that kind of thing. So I would assume version 1, but I would take Listen and Fun, Tiger Force, and one that isn't on there, Fun School, all day long. That Bomb Squad Fun School one, yes, please sign me up. Blades. I mean, SAS Blades, who I always forget, and I shouldn't because he's Palatoy. But carry on. Sorry, carry on.
Then they kicked off PulseCon. Or actually, this was still in preview. I've got these in order, but we'll just whatever. As the slides come up, we'll go over them.
Mate, so excited about this. I'm not getting them, unfortunately, because I'm strict on what I'm collecting. But I love what they're doing on both lines with the indie stuff. Brilliant.
I thought it was it's interesting that they're doing them, having done a couple. From what I know, it's not, to me, Indiana Jones is sort of a standalone property that I've never wanted toys from.
Yeah.
And but they've said that they've got 25 figures sort of in process, which 4 to 6 figures per wave. If we sort of use what they've revealed so far, that's
27 years.
They can extend it.
And we're talking delivery time. If we're talking delivery time, because that would be 39 years, I believe. Yeah.
Between pre-orders and exclusives.
Sorry, Larry just mentioned Outback was repaint before the regular. We're not talking about that, Larry. We're talking about when pipeline reveals were started. And Outback wasn't a pipeline reveal. He was just revealed as Tiger Force Outback.
Yeah.
But no, that is true. That is exactly, you're 100% correct on that. Outback was the repaint before the regular.
Yeah, and they've sort of made a habit of doing that, which you and I have discussed, and I think it's
Kondo, yeah.
I think it's really good marketing, because if you need the character sooner rather than later, you'll get the pre-paint.
Yeah.
If you can wait, good for you. I mean, if we get a pre-paint, if we get a Tiger Force or a Python Patrol of a figure, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to get a standard release of it as well. It would be it would be absurd to me to think that when they announced, the Tiger Force Outback, that people were like, well, I hope we get the regular one. And I was like, that doesn't, why wouldn't we
Why
get the
wouldn't
regular
you?
one?
Yeah, like
You
of
already
course
have the tool. You
the
already have
whole
the mold. Like
it's not a question of if, it's a
it's when.
question of when, and it 100% always will be. It's funny how people will see the regular version and be like, oh, they can repaint that as the Tiger Force one, but they'll say that as naturally and as they would say, oh God, I hope we get the regular one when they see that. And it's just not the case. You know for a fact it's happening. They wouldn't. That's not like. It's just how it's done. It's like, here's a figure. We're going to use it. We need to use the tooling again. Of course, we'll get that repaint, whatever way round it is.
And that's a good point in terms of like reuse of molds and reuse of parts. If it's a pre-paint, you're guaranteed to get the standard, because with the standard stuff they've reused all the parts and for different figures, right? But if you've got a character that's already a standard release in a pre-paint, it's a no-brainer.
The only one that might take a little while to come out is Tiger Force Roadblock, because we've had so many Roadblocks already. But I still will say it'll happen at some point. We've got Duke as a Tiger Force figure, and look at the distance between those two figures.
Of all of the Tiger Force decos, I think Roadblocks is one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, with the helmet and everything.
The yellow helmet. Yeah, I would love to get that, but
and he wore the brown pants.
Larry's a Transformer guy, so like I live in Transformers world. They live for repaints.
Yeah.
You know what? I think they're just lucky that robots. You think of like Starscream. He's by default gonna get repainted as
Skywalker, Thundercracker.
Like, yeah, you get
retools to get thrust,
and it's not even
to get
and it's not even considered like a faux pas, because they're the same. They're robots. It's sort of, that's just what they, their flight mode is the same, just different deco. So the robot mode, anyway, that's neither here nor there. The Indiana Jones stuff I think looks really cool. I know a lot of people that are just getting Indy just to have sort of representation on their shelf of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the 1-to-1 replica of this little. That was always my favorite sort of relic that he ever, and that was first thing right at the beginning, right? First scene.
Yeah. I'll come with a giant boulder as well. HasLab boulder. That'll be
so they're doing the build an arc. Somebody said build a boulder for wave 2. You get like a chunk. You have to puzzle your boulder together.
That'd be amazing.
Black Series was primarily Andor stuff.
I will say that's one hell of a show, by the way.
Great show. Again, for me, a lot of Star Wars in terms of like the small amount of stuff that I collect is droids or sort of armored characters or aliens. So, you look at this poster and you're like, okay, they're all humans.
One thing I've noticed that actually about Transformers media in general in recent years. It's like, they churn out a lot of it, and honestly, I watch all of it and I enjoy the majority of it. I enjoy all of it. I'm not going to lie. Like I really get into, like, I love the Mandalorian. I thought that kind of changed the game. I wasn't like a huge, like I dropped out of Star Wars kind of like around the second sequel, the new sequels. It wasn't really. I don't know. There was a big quality drop, I think, personally, in a lot of aspects, and it just wasn't something I was really that into. And then when Mandalorian came about, changed the game for me, and I've been loving everything since. All the little shows, the spin-offs, all that kind of stuff. But what I've noticed is this kind of like minimization of alien characters, or at least pushing them to the background so they're not as prominent. And it's kind of like, it's such a shame, because I feel like I get the relatable aspect of, we're watching it, we're going to relate with, Andor over like Babu Frick or whatever, for example. But tell you now, I would kill for a spin-off of Babu Frick. Like, I'd be like, just make 8 movies and like a 65 episode series, and I would watch it over everything else. It would be amazing. I've noticed that it's a big trend, isn't it? It's like mainly human characters. I
think you kind of touched on something, is that it it is kind of shifted since it got bought by Disney. It's kind of shifted from an event to something that's just always there. And so by default, they're putting out so much more content. I think I'm just sort of trying to, the wheels are sort of spinning in my head as we're talking about it. It's way harder to get these sort of
more expensive
3D aliens, especially when they do the big ones. Like there's that big one that has like robot arms and stuff who walk through the background, I think in the first episode of Andor. But if you can have him in the background, all he has to do is walk across the screen. He doesn't like the animatronics don't have to work properly. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, right? Like,
well, they just stick like a green bag over someone's head and they just CGI it in very quickly.
In lots of cases too. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a big part of it. It's just cost effective to have humans.
I have
even
enjoyed,
the droids to some extent.
I have enjoyed, again, the recent utilization of more practical effects in Star Wars, though. Like, I love when they do characters that are more puppet than CGI. And that is honestly generally the case. That is the case for most of the recent stuff. But it's just interesting to me that, like the droid element so far in Andor has been very minimal with that beautiful little red. I think he's so adorable, that little red droid.
Yeah.
Very kind of like do it yourself, but like build a droid.
Emo.
Love him. So like, and I was such a shill for BB-8 as well. Like I was in love with that droid. And I even got the Sphero toy with the phone. Oh, he's just the most. I had so much fun with that little thing. Absolutely love him.
For me, the droids always like the droid. So Star Wars just it's war. It's sort of good versus evil if you really sort of boil it down. The droids are fantastic because they're by default the comic element that sort of levels everything out, so nothing's too heavy. Like Rogue One was before Andor, the only, I guess in some respects, the only adult version of Star Wars that we'd had. But K2SO was so pitch perfect in terms of the how they describe. Okay, well he was an Imperial droid. Now because we're not flushing his memory, like he has a personality. Like even the difference between Imperial droids and Rebel droids, or droids where they're not wiping them regularly, where they develop these personalities. And I think the not the rumor, but sort of the mythology of R2-D2 is that he's really foul-mouthed. But because there's never a translation for what he says.
I thought he was foul-mouthed anyway, because I just thought they were just censoring him every time he spoke.
Yeah, they just didn't put it up. And I think that's so clever, because it's just like, R2-D2 and C-3PO, like just going back and forth, like you don't know what they're saying, and that's part of the fun, is you can just sort of imagine it. But anyway,
I know Larry mentioned Book of Boba Fett was a little bit of a miss, but again, I really enjoyed that, Larry. I don't kind of watch everything necessarily. I'm not saying you do this either, and I'm not saying anyone does this necessarily, but when I watch this stuff, I kind of give it its own space, if that makes sense. Like I watch it, and if I sit there and I'm into it and I'm watching it and I'm enjoying it, and I get like taken into that universe, it has done its job for me. Then afterwards you can kind of analyze it, and you can kind of go, oh, that maybe isn't something that would happen. But a lot of this is, it's not real. And so like, I think I can just, I compartmentalize it differently. And I know there were some aspects of Book of Boba Fett that were a little bit iffy, but I still sat there and was like engrossed in it every single, episode. I think when I get kind of taken out of it easily, which might have been the case for yourself with Book of Boba Fett, that was definitely the case for me with a couple of the movies, like the last I forget what they're called. I just completely put them out of my mind. Something
Last
Skywalker,
Jedi and Rise of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. That's it. Yeah, Rise of Cobra. Semicolon.
Retaliation. Star Wars
Retaliation. Skywalker. Yeah. Skywalker Retaliation. The Rise of Cobra. Yeah.
I think I have a similar feeling in terms of Star Wars properties, or Star Wars sort of shows or movies or what have you, that just don't quite land for me personally. But it's the thing that I think we always forget, and it's easy to forget this, and we all do this, right? because we're watching it, we're sort of taking this stuff in. Sometimes what we don't realize is that maybe it's not for us. Maybe they're not. Maybe we're not the audience. Like if I'm a huge Star Wars fan, like I said, I got Star Wars sheets, so I'm guilty as charged there. I watch it all. I'm not gonna say like all of them are my favorites. They're all equal. And what is that?
It's my wallet.
Oh,
it's a Boba Fett wallet. I've had
this
for
Fett helmet.
When you open it out, like you got that in the inside as well. Look.
Oh yeah.
It's well worn though. Look how knackered it is. You can kind of see my ID on there. But yeah. Anyway, that's I just wanted to. Yeah, I'm just proving that I'm also a Star Wars fan.
We've got a whole bin of those like toy lightsabers that my kids love. That's the other thing, right? Like there's Star Wars stuff that you guys probably haven't even watched because it's for kids. My point being, Mandalorian was the exception to the rule. I think now Star Wars being as prevalent as it is, I think they're aiming for middling. I don't think they're aiming for greatness anymore. And I don't fault them for that, right? Like it's a huge corporation that's trying to make money, and they are a lot of money. If I don't like it, they still make the money. Is kind of now don't get that sort of twisted in a way to sort of make it sound like I'm saying I'm happy if they just put out junk.
Yeah.
When they put out something like Mandalorian, I'm sort of feeling with Andor that this is a really, really good, strong offering. I really enjoyed Obi-Wan, but I didn't think it was very well made. Book of Boba Fett, same thing. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I even enjoyed the Mod Squad.
Yeah.
But I get why it didn't.
That made me laugh, actually. That I think I will say, actually, with Larry's comment, that did actually pull me out of that episode. The chase, the slow speed chase through the streets was kind of weird. But yeah, and it was a little bit out of place in my head. But again, you're right. It might not necessarily be for me.
You know what I really think the miss was with that the mods was, I felt like I knew what they were going for. I felt like they were going for mods like Quadrophenia type of like scooter gang.
Yep.
I think where they missed was having the scooters be all shiny and stuff, because it didn't feel like Star Wars. It felt on brand for what a mod would be, in terms of like the mod scooters with all the mirrors and all the horns and all the crazy stuff, and that being sort of, but you kind of have to understand what mods were to understand why they're shiny. And I don't know that people kind of put two and two together in that respect. So I get why that didn't land.
For me, I think it'd have been like probably more a lot better if they'd have made them more droid-like, more cybernetic, like not just a few little add-ons, but mainly human, but like serious, like, oh, that's basically a droid with a human's arm. That kind of thing would have been so awesome. And I think that would have been more believable. Also, everything was too clean. The clothes were too clean. They were too clean. The mods were too shiny. The vehicles they had were way too polished and stuff. And you just think, you're in the desert. Like by default, just existing in that environment, you're already dirty. You're already sweating everywhere, and you're already covered in sand pretty much on everything you have. So I don't get it. Yeah.
If they had done an episode on a planet like Coruscant or something like that, I think that they could have pulled it off. I think Tatooine just didn't.
Yeah, you're right. I think definitely the environment it was wrong for the environment. Yeah, and I agree. Okay, that's that.
Selfie series.
Hell yeah, baby.
They plugged this thing like crazy.
They certainly did.
Between every panel, even during the panels, each brand team sort of had their figures to show off. This will come back up. I was gonna say this will come up later because I pulled your pictures to sort of show them.
Good. Hilarious.
But when you posted those pictures, my response was, "Oh, cool. Who's that?"
For me, I think I will 100% say I was a little disappointed at when I actually did it. When I did the scan and got it the first time, I was kind of looked at it. I'm like, that I'm not sure. I showed it to Kate, and Kate was just like, "What? Who is that?" And so I did another like 6 scans, and eventually got one that I thought, you know what, the face actually, I'm there with it. The face is fine, and that's when you get that picture that I just showed that you'll probably show in a second. But that one, I was kind of like, yeah, that's on point. For me, they did not have my haircut. My haircut is kind of the large sweeping coif, short back and sides. It's often shaved at the sides and the back. And they just didn't have my hair. So the closest one I could find was the one that was on the hair, on that thing. And also when I chose dark brown, which is what my hair is, and my beard, when I actually looked at it, I'm like, it didn't look right. So I had to go with black for the hair and the beard in order to make it. And I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, that's actually more like it. So I think there's a lot of development in this that I think we'll see in the future. I think we'll see an improvement in the scan. I think we'll see an improvement or an increase in the options for hairstyles and the color tones as well. Because, I was kind of umming and ahhing between skin tone. I was like, I'm pasty, but I'm not that pasty. And I was kind of like, but I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm not there either. I'm somewhere in between. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on this before it's perfect. But I didn't want to miss out on the historical aspect of it.
Sure.
And also the price at $60.
Yes,
do you know what I mean?
Rather than 80.
Yeah.
Today it's probably 80. Tristan makes a good point in terms of missing out on the historical aspect. The Pulse app don't work in Canada. Yes. So it was limited to the US.
Sorry, guys, yeah.
Which
I expect it to increase as well. This is a test, trust me. This is like let's see if this is worth doing. Clearly it was successful. Like, it was a successful thing, because they had to say, yeah, we're having trouble with the app at the moment because everyone is trying to access it in the world. Well, everyone in the United States is trying to access it. So I think just that in itself, the fact they may have, this is the thing with apps. You can't always, no matter what you do, you can't always prepare yourself for the influx of it being really, really successful. So I like how you switched us there, as if I was talking, so I get higher billing. Like, you can't like prepare exactly for it. Like, you could have like a farm of servers underground being cooled by a lake in Virginia, right? You could have that before you go to launch the app. But I guarantee you there will be bugs in there that the coders just have to deal with when it happens. And as someone that has like developed an app as well, Hoarder, Hoardar, go check it out, hoarder.com. You can also find it on Android and iOS devices. We had all sorts of teething issues, even in the beta phase. So, and that was, even when we went through like 3 years of beta testing, right? And even at that point, after getting it where we thought we were good, you launch sort of soft launch officially, and again, loads of issues. So I think there's a lot more to come from the Selfie series, and I think it's going to develop and improve, just as everything else is, because it was successful. So I think they'll continue doing it.
And I think you're absolutely right that as it sort of scales, like as they get it right, they will be more apt to scale it up. And as they scale it up, maybe they'll offer more skin tones, more colors of hair, more flamboyant hairstyles.
Tristan said they were too shiny for Tatooine. I'm not sure if he's talking about the motorcycles or he's talking about my face on that Selfie series figure.
Might be both. We'll bring up the pictures in a minute. Tyler says that's good news for us Canadians, because by the time it gets to us, maybe the kinks will be worked out. Yeah,
there'll be new kinks. New kinks for you, Smiler 67.
There be, yeah. I mean, that helmeted face. I don't know how they'll get that.
It'll just reflect. It'll be your phone that it scans.
The graphic will just be a phone. Larry said, "I'm in the States next week. I might try it."
You'll have to change your phone. Whatever it is, like your iTunes location. Or whatever your phone's set to. You'll have to change it, because I can't use it on my phone either. I've got a new case, by the way. It's all camouflage, but I can't use it on my phone because my phone's still set to the
UK.
UK, because I have things in the UK that I still need to access. So
Yep.
unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's an American phone, annoyingly. So I've got an American number and all that kind of stuff. But the iTunes, or not iTunes, but you know what I mean, the Apple
The
ID,
geolocation kind of,
yeah. So but you might have to like set up another use another email and set up another account when you go to the US or something, maybe.
I've heard it's fairly easy in terms of how people have done it for like getting like exclusives when they're in the States kind of thing, but I don't know about this one.
That's cool. It might be different Canada to the US anyways. I might just be talking out of turn anyway, so yeah.
Transformers, these are really cool. I like that they're doing all the Dinobots and that they combine.
Love the Dinobots.
This is something like I got all my Earthrise Transformers and I got a bunch of the Kingdom ones, but I'm sort of good. Like I got all the characters that I really know well and love. I didn't get the Dinobots because they're kind of too big. I didn't have room for them, but this is something that I could go for sort of, I don't know what they go for now, but like less than $20 per. They're just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think Transformers are kind of killing it in terms of like for a while I was Masterpiece only, and that has kind of got to the point where it's out of my price range now, honestly. Like it went up like so much between like 3 or 4 figures, and then it was like, I'm kind of out. So what they're doing here and what they're doing in other crossovers and what they're doing in the main line, they just make some wonderful toys, and like for the price range too, just incredible value for money too, I think, personally.
Yeah, Larry's saying in Canada these are $16.99, so after tax they're still under $20, which is pretty good. I mean, I G.I. Joe kind of tried it with that sort of wave of movie crossover. Then they had like the Ninja Viper, or what's the purple one? You're missing it too. Anyway, it didn't quite land. I think people didn't quite buy it. They weren't scaled quite right to classified, so they weren't.
Oh, you mean the Night Creeper?
Night Creeper, yeah.
Okay, you mean the kids movie 5-inch figures or 5.5-inch figures?
They were just shorter than the classified figures, and the articulation was not quite as good, and they were a little shinier. I thought they were okay for stand-ins. I think to get a couple Night Creepers would not have been a bad idea. I never saw the Night Creepers here, but
it was weird as well, and it was part of that time period where the movie was struggling and flopping, and I think it was a bit of a miss on all fronts, unfortunately. I mean, you'll still see the classified movie figures on pegs, which is a shame.
That's all you see at the Walmart here. That and 2 retro Lady J's that have been there for weeks.
Insane.
I like 6 in a box. I bought 2.
I do love my Lady J.
Somebody else bought 2, and then there's 2 more on there for ages.
She's so cool.
I honestly bought so close to the standard release, but the vintage accessories, just I had to have those vintage accessories.
So good.
The Transformers Light Bright, again, this is one of those things where you kind of scratch your head and go, well, I guess they have the ability to make light bright. Why
they have the technology, so
offer it to a different market that might not otherwise have ever thought to buy a light bright. It is, to the best of my knowledge, the largest light bright screen that they've ever done, which offers some possibilities. And if somebody is sort of inclined, I think maybe you could get pretty creative with this. It's just not for me, but I thought it was. I always think it's cool and interesting when they sort of offer something like this. Which is why I left this one in there, despite there being tons of other stuff that they.
No, I think it's cute. And I like, I don't know. It's just it's a bit of fun, isn't it? And if you want it, and again, you can use it as kind of artwork. You can like decorate your your space, or your office space, or your if you've got like a kind of little nerdy area, or even if you're in that kind of scenario where your entire house is a nerd fest like ours, you can just have it on the wall, above your TV. We've got a Sky Striker and a Rattler picture above our TV. And yeah, we did have other things. I think we had the USS Flag up there for a period of time as well. So yeah, like it's cool, man. And I think, I'm personally not going to jump on this, but it's definitely there for people that want to decorate their spaces.
The closest I have to this is I got a little bit of Lego in our living room, as well as a Poe Dameron helmet, but that's on the top shelf, and most people don't even notice it. But then when they do, they're like, "Is that a Star Wars helmet on your shelf?"
Is that
I was
allowed?
like, "Is that? I don't. What? Oh, I guess it is."
Ooh,
Then
that's a long shot.
And then Legends just banged us over the head with a whole bunch of great stuff, as we kind of alluded to at the beginning.
I love that packaging.
Of all the packaging for sort of the retro lines and retro waves and things like this is the only one that really speaks to me, is the sort of Toy Biz X-Men stuff specifically, because that was the stuff that I had as a kid.
You see, this is where G.I. Joe should go with the retro carded stuff. They should venture away from, and I'm not saying Hector Garrido should ever be ventured away from, because he's an absolute genius and the artwork he did was phenomenal. But then also Earl Norham and Doug Hart and all the other guys that did artwork for the vintage line. They're all geniuses and they all did beautiful, beautiful work. But it would be nice every now and again to venture into some of the artwork that we got in the late 80s, early 90s, Tiger Force, Iron Grenadiers. That before we even get to the kind of like big change ups where it was like a different size card, and you've got Ninja Force and you've got the Star Brigade and things like that. That's where I think retro could do some real awesome damage, and then also be then competing with this on shelves where you've got the bright Spider-Man wave and you've got the Uncanny X-Men Toy Biz and you've got the all that different kind of stuff. Like, I think that would be really cool for Joe to kind of venture into that, because I think the Toy Biz stuff is gorgeous.
It brings up some interesting questions too, because you've said this before, and I completely agree that they took the white border off the G.I. Joe card, and it's so, to me, it's so iconic. It was that was something that the card had, and the new cards just kind of look cheaper because of it.
Don't look as strong, do they? They look flimsy.
This doesn't have a white border, but it never did, and there's something about like the vibrant colors where it doesn't need it. Yep. This looks strong. The G.I. Joe without that white border just looks.
They didn't. I have a feeling they didn't do it for these figures because they were going for a comic book design. And obviously comic book designs, they don't necessarily have borders on them. So it's like, you've got the Marvel Comics thing in the top corner, you've got the very solid prominent logo at the top, and then you've got the comic art, which obviously has to be offset from the figure. So that was their design philosophy. With the G.I. Joe cards, it wasn't done as a comic, it was done as like a like a specific explosion backed or whatever. So yeah, that's I think the difference is. But the Joe card kind of needs it for that strength. Like it needs it to. As soon as you take it away, it's like everything looks really flimsy, and it's really hard to explain why.
Not to mention, it's on a flimsy card.
It's on an actual flimsy card, yeah.
But of all the reveals from the Marvel Legends brand panel, this wave of the retro carded figures, I think, is incredibly strong. The Dark Phoenix Legends figure is a couple $100 kind of thing at this point. Yeah. So the fact that people can pick it up for $25 in the US, or sort of $35 up here, is fantastic.
Totally.
All the people that were hoarding those I guess vintage at this point ones are crying, because what was $300 a week ago is worth $30 now.
That you have to factor that in if you're going to be that kind of reseller. You have to factor the fact in that there are going to be figures released after the fact on a figure that might be a lot of money at the time. So the whole point of that industry or that situation is that you have to strike while the iron is hot, and you shouldn't necessarily build an entire, not philosophy, but you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, is what I'm saying. And I think for the most part, people don't do that. But the odd people that want to just flip a figure, fine. But if you're going to be doing that, then you'll have to expect it at some point. It's going to happen. Short term as well.
And there may be a thing too where long term, like it's now sort of dropped, right? Like this may be a valley of value if you've got sort of a mint on card 2-pack of Dark Phoenix and Cyclops. But 5 years from now, it might go back up because, you
Yeah.
know, say this wave brings in more new Marvel Legends figures, collectors like Tyler. Um, you know, they may go back and go, oh, I want the original version of it, because there's still, you know, it's still that thing of like people that are vintage collectors. They're like, oh no, it can't be a repro. It can't be,
Yeah.
you know, it has to be on card, and it can't be a reprinted card. It can't be re-glued, and on and on and on. So everybody collects differently. That value might go back. It might still be there for all I know. I'm not paying attention because I'm not buying it anyway. But
Sometimes, well, another figure will come out like that, and it doesn't affect the value of
yep.
Of those other figures, because there's more to that. Like you say, a 2-pack in a different box with there's different aspects to it, make it more valuable anyway. So yeah, it's one of those things where you can't really predict it. You can have a good idea, but you can't predict 100% each time. It's impossible. My favorite of the bunch, Spiral, looks incredible.
You know, and I've heard a lot of people talk about this figure specifically in terms of the engineering, in terms of sort of what's going on here. Pinless double jointed knees and elbows on a female figure that still has articulation, sort of like a chest cut. The way they position the 6 arms to sort of not just put them sort of vertically in a row just adds so much depth.
Yeah, kind of like in a triangular
so
formation, aren't they? In the base of the body. I think this is incredible. And it's funny that you get all those pinless limbs and it's on a figure with like 37 limbs. It's brilliant. My math is a little bit off there. But yeah, just a brilliant figure, awesome character, looks incredible. And they've made a figure that really captures just how awesome she is.
Oh, I agree. And you know, and then you get 5 swords in the axe thing. Like, it's just, there's so much cool stuff going on here. I think, again, a lot of people that even aren't, you know, Legends collectors or aren't X-Men fans are going to look at this figure and pick this figure up just because, plain and simple, it's just a fantastic looking figure.
Yeah, I know. I did that a few times actually as a collector, like early 2000s, where I'd go into like a toy store, because it was like at that point it was very much a novelty, and you'd see old Toy Biz figures, or like you'd see old, you know, Marvel based stuff, or even like, you know, the DC kind of retro figures and stuff like that, and the Marvel retro, all that kind of stuff. And there'd be figures in there that I wouldn't really have any care for or know anything about, and I'd buy it because it looked awesome. And this is one of those ones where you're right. I think people are going to just pick this up because it just looks incredible. So nuts.
Tyler said it's the Dark Phoenix that sucked him in. Just looks so good. Yeah, it looks better than the original version. Larry, there's always going to be re-release. There is always going to re-release a better version. I have the Pizza Spider-Man that used to go for 100, 150, but with the new Spider-Man that came out this summer is so much better. Well, Larry, it's funny that you mentioned Spider-Man too, because that's that's sort of a great segue to this guy. But as far as Spider-Man goes, yeah, that Pizza Spider-Man was people were kind of like praising that as like the pinnacle of engineering for sort of Hasbro action figures. And then they released the retro carded one, and people were like, well, who wants a Pizza Spider-Man? And then the Renew Your Vows one came out, and people were like, well, who wants a retro Spider-Man? This sort of rapidity at which they're releasing specific characters, I don't fault them.
I struggle with that though. If I collect something, I collect it. Like, and you know, obviously, I know I've kind of pared down a lot of the stuff that I used to collect. Now it's specifically classified as what I focus on, and I very rarely venture away from that, unless someone, you know, gives me something, or unless somebody, like, you know, gifts me or something or whatever. But I don't get and again, everyone collects differently, but my mindset is like, I kind of, you know, classified's my baby, and I want to have all the classified figures, even if it's like a repaint Snake Eyes and Timber, even if it's you know, a Cobra Ninja Blue Ninja 2-pack that's I've already effectively got in a Kiko and a Red Ninja. Like, I want all of it, and I find it difficult to be like, I've got this one, but a better one is here, so I'm going to sell that. I just have to have them all.
Well, and I mean, and you get them at different times, and there's sort of different things going on, and maybe you find a pose that you really like with one, or there's an accessory or something.
Yeah.
Like Wolverine is a great example because for me, like most of my Legends are X-Men, so by default, I have a whole bunch of Wolverines.
There was that amazing wave, wasn't it, that had like Bobby, Jean Grey, Rogue, Wolverine, Cable, I want to say, and it was the build a figure Juggernaut.
The
That
Juggernaut one,
I
yeah.
thought that was an amazing, like, that ticked so many boxes in terms of my X-Men collection for Legends, that I was kind of happy with those. But since then, there's been about 50 of each.
Well, that's it. Like the volume of figures that Legends has been putting out. I had effectively stopped buying Legends, and I was having a conversation with some of the people that are sort of in the chat here and sort of that I talk to regularly about how, like, yeah, I'm pretty much done on Legends. Like there's a couple exceptions. My exceptions were blue and yellow suited X-Men from the 275 cover, Generation X characters, and then sort of a couple random ones, like a couple iconic characters that we haven't had, i.e. Longshot,
Yeah,
Spiral,
Mojo,
like a Dark
Spiral,
Phoenix re-release.
yeah.
I was like, oh no.
I was my focus before wanting to get all the X-Men was X-Force, Uncanny X-Force, but it was specifically the team that was Phantom X, Psylocke, Wolverine, Deadpool,
the
and
Uncanny X-Force that Remender wrote a few years ago.
with the really dark kind of like
the gray and black.
But like the really dark penultimate issue where Phantom X kind of were like, yeah, I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it. It's one of my favorite actual comic stories. I really enjoyed that series, and it was really interesting. They were kind of like a Black Ops team for Cyclops. It was just a really interesting, cool storyline, and the whole like. And I've always been a big Psylocke fan, so like I thought she was done really well in that, and like I loved her costume in that black and grey costume. They were all awesome. So I remember getting that SDCC exclusive set that had the three of them in it, and I also had like not the three of the X-Force in it, and I had Archangel was the other one, wasn't it? Oh my god, what an amazing series that was. Amazing. Yeah, if you haven't read it, guys, it's worth checking out. Really good series.
It's really good, and it's
really short as well. It's not like a really long one that's gonna
I think it's collected in like 6 trade paperbacks, so it's not, it wouldn't be time consuming to get it, and it's not hard to get either. Like it's still in print, I think. So it's but the blue and yellow Jim Lee era X-Men, I won all of them, and I was saying that, and then they're like, okay, here's Wolverine, and if you get it, and if you like this suit, make sure you get this one, because then they did the reveal for Storm as well as Banshee in these suits. And the rumor is, I think it's not confirmed by Hasbro, but it was sort of a pretty reputable source, said that there's so apart from Wolverine in this picture, there are 6 other characters pictured. And the rumor is it's going to be 2 3-packs, and I was like, well, that's the team done. I guess I'm getting these figures for sure, which I'm very happy about. And then sort of looking at this, Lalandra's on this cover. We've never got a Lalandra. We got the head, but not a body.
Yeah, Jubilee.
Outback Rogue. Maybe an updated Magneto, because the last Magneto was that the 3-pack with Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, so I could see that potentially. And sort of the rest of the ones on this cover, I could see them doing in short succession. And I guess I'm a Marvel Legends collector again all of a sudden.
That's how they get you.
That's how they get you. But it's it's one of those things where it sort of ebbs and flows, and it's I know what characters I would buy for Marvel Legends. So when they revealed Wolverine, I was like, well, I have lots of Wolverines, but I love that suit specifically, so I'll go for that. There's still one more Wolverine that they haven't done that came out in the Toy Biz era that I really, really would like. And I was foolish and didn't think of it at the time to get a slide, but he was in like a black covert ops suits with like gold gear and stuff on.
I was trying to think which one you were talking about, but because when you say Toy Biz Wolverine, I just think of the naked one with the Weapon X basically.
Yeah.
And I knew they'd already done that, so like I was trying to think, which one is he talking about? Yeah, okay. Because again, that era, I'm like I'm definitely a huge fan of the X-Men. I've been a huge fan of the X-Men since I was little, and I loved the show, loved the comic, etc., etc. Am I as knowledgeable about X-Men as I am G.I. Joe? Not even close.
Mhm.
But mainly just due to the volume of like Marvel generated media since like the friggin' 50s or whenever it was.
Yeah,
So
you've
like
got literal decades of stuff to pull from in terms of
exactly.
decos, in terms of storylines, in terms of
I
why
tend to be one
people
of those
love characters.
people when Marvel Legends release something, I'll do a little research on it. Do you know what I mean? I'll kind of go,
Yeah,
oh, let me see if I don't know anything about it. So not necessarily for this particular wave, but in the past where they've done waves of like random characters that I've never even
Maggot,
heard of before. Yeah. But like there could be some random one. I'll just be like, okay, yeah,
random.
I'll check that out. Yeah. It could just be random. But yeah, there's so much of it. And there's another thing, like the Marvel TV shows. I
Mhm.
am hooked, man. Like She-Hulk, I'm loving She-Hulk right now.
That's
Adore it.
and
Adore
again,
it.
not a show that's going to land with everybody that loves the MCU because
Yeah.
it's definitely a
Different. Werewolf by Night as well. Oh,
I watched that the other night, and I was
so
very
good.
pleasantly surprised.
When I won't say anything. I won't say the spoiler, but when I saw Ted, I was like going, oh my God. Like that was just, I was
I was
just
like,
so
well, that's
excited.
not the direction I thought they were going
Nope.
with this.
No. So yeah, it's brilliant. So yeah. And also Elsa Bloodstone, come on. That she is awesome. So yeah, really dope. Anyway, carry on.
They're planting so many seeds, right? Like that's a lot of, I think a lot of what they're doing in sort of the Marvel television universe as it is now, is planting seeds and sort of like giving a little bit of backstory to certain characters or certain potential plot lines or
The
what have
MTU.
you.
It's
The
the
what?
MTU.
The
It's the Marvel
MCU, yeah.
television universe now, isn't it?
The
Yeah.
MCTU, the Marvel Cinematic / Television Universe. It gets confusing though, because I mean, if you didn't have Disney Plus, I don't know if you're an MCU fan, I would be shocked if you didn't have Disney Plus. But
Not possible.
But what if you're not watching some of these things and there's I guess you just get it, you glean it from the internet, you'd read about it or whatever. But
Nice.
Black Series, we're at an hour and a half. We haven't even got to the topic of our
Sorry.
episode.
Zip through it. We'll zip through it now. Come on, let's do it.
Black Series, like I said, the stuff that I'm interested in, this sort of completes my team from the Mandalorian of Mandalorian troopers. Those blue suits look really, really good. Gorgeous. They pop on the shelf. That's just, I'm surprised it took this long to get this figure. Return of the Jedi
Fantastic.
Has always been my favorite Star Wars sort of offering. It always will be for so many nostalgic reasons. These I passed on when they came out a couple years ago because I was like, well, I mean, I don't really want those if I'm not, I wasn't doing Black Series at that time. And I was like, well, I mean, if it's Return of the Jedi, like, what's that if we don't get Ewoks? Well, surprise.
I was going to say, actually, on the previous screen, soft goods are always hit and miss, I think, in Black Series. But I think the jacket on hand looks incredible. And I think you can get away with the kind of schmuck thing, or whatever that is, whatever you describe it, kind of the poncho for the rest of the troops and Leia. You can kind of get away with it because that's effectively what it looks like.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, carry on. Ewoks, yeah, 100%, man. So happy for
Wicket, he's gonna be adorable. He's gonna be
Lovely.
like this big, and I'm all for it. Now I gotta backtrack and get the one Ewok they released in the standard wave, plus try to track down the box set one because Wicket is effectively the third one that they've released.
I do have that Black Series, and I've completely forgotten what character it is.
It's Paplu, isn't it?
Yes, you're right, 100%.
And I passed on that. I was like, oh, why would they pick that one? Because they were planning for Wicket to come out later.
Yeah.
But limited articulation, but I think what they've done looks pretty good.
He's got a few there though. Like,
yeah, I mean,
he's got like hip, ankle, wrist, elbow, and shoulder articulation,
in the
head.
shots that they showed, he'll pose fine. He'll pose fine for what I need. I don't need him in some sort of kung fu position.
Watch the Ewoks. They cannot
They
do
can't move.
anything other than what would effectively be a Palatoy figure.
Yeah.
So do not worry about that. Yeah, you can get them in the poses that they actually can do in real
Yeah,
life.
you don't need this guy doing the splits or doing some sort of high kick or like he does that. He stands there with a spear. He could point the spear too, so you're good to go. Then we got the actual G.I. Joe brand panel. Name reveals were the Snow Serpent, Buzzer, and the female
trooper.
Is that what they called her? Female Cobra Trooper?
Mm-hmm. I say that like I might already know, don't I?
Well,
yeah, it's Snow Serpent, Buzzer, and female trooper. So. Yeah. we're doing that pretend thing again, aren't we? Yeah, carry on.
Surprised these names were. I think these are great choices. I think these are figures that people have been asking for. That Snow Serpent's going to look great with the accessories. I really hope that Snow Job and the Snow Serpent get released around the same time.
That would be good.
Because it's sort of weird to have one and not the other. All the people that were asking for Dreadnoks are we got Ripper. Buzzer, we got Ripper coming, Zarana's coming. You have to imagine that Xandar.
Oh, I didn't know it was you. I can't.
There you go. I'll let you get it out. Xandar's got to be locked in.
Yeah, but we'd never know because he'd be in the background. No one would notice that he was there. His Dio shots would come up. It would just be a completely like empty Dio set. He'd be like, "Oh, he's in the background over there." I think just blending in. Yeah.
These are all great reveals.
Yeah, agreed.
When they do the name reveals, it just doesn't do as much for me though. Like I'm much more excited when we start seeing digital renders. I very much prefer to get an idea of what the offering is going to be. Just personally, I look at the list of all the G.I. Joes that we could get, and I just assume that those are the figures that we're going to get. So until I see this, I love that they went a little bit thicker with Bazooka.
Yeah.
And kept the jersey.
Oh, you mean, I thought you meant mentally, but yeah, you're right.
Well, maybe.
I think that is one of the, okay, full disclosure, that head sculpt, I have seen it in reality. And it's sensation. Well, we have, haven't we? We've seen it in, I say it like I've seen it in reality. We all have, because it's been Tiger Force version.
Yeah.
But actually in like physical reality. And that head sculpt is one of the best in the line. Him and Recondo have got really full of personality head sculpts. So I'm kind of saying that like other people haven't seen that figure, trying to flex, and everyone's like, we know the Tiger Force one.
Yeah, you went for lunch with Lenny. You've seen Bazooka's head sculpt. Yeah, we get it. Like you're saying about rock and roll, though, it's not quite version 1. It's not quite version 2. I like what they did with it. I love that they. I've been saying this sort of all the time. I like the updates. I like when it's not quite a version that we've seen before. The ammo belts, multiple, look great. I think the tattoos, I'm on the fence. I got to see what they look like on a physical figure.
Do you know what makes me laugh, though? It's like everybody in the fandom loves tattoos because they all have them. Like I've seen loads of people covered in tattoos. You've got them. Everyone's got tattoos. Arashikage tattoo. They've got like full sleeves, all the kind of stuff. And then it goes on a figure and everyone loses their mind. And it's like, do you not want your characters to replicate reality? Because there aren't that many with tattoos. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know it's more probably about the sanctity of the vintage era and all this kind of stuff. But I definitely think, this is I'm saying this like other people's thoughts aren't valid or whatever, and I don't mean it to sound that way. I think what I'm getting at is I find it surprising that people can't accept certain things on certain figures. Rock and roll, I could easily see as a person that loves tattoos. I could easily see him having tattoos all over him. His name is Rock and Roll. He is a stoner. He is a guitarist. He is a surfer. Like, the guy is going to have tattoos. I'm sorry. In reality, that guy would have a tattoo or 25. Anyway.
I agree with you 100%. And I think, he's probably got chest, back, legs, like everywhere.
Back, sack, and crack tats.
check, check, check. For me, it's more the execution of how you can put a tattoo on a toy, and sometimes they just look cartoony, and it doesn't look quite right. But they did mention that most of these, instead of using black, they've used sort of like a dark indigo to sort of make it look like he's had them for a while.
That's a great idea, isn't it?
So that sounds fantastic. I want to see the execution of it before I sort of decide whether or not I like it. I think the figure looks fantastic.
Do you know what I'm going to say though on that? I will say in terms of execution, there's some good precedent set with things like Outback's arm hair, and I'm not just saying like that as a you know, they've done that so it'll be perfect, but like when you look at some of the things they've done on recent figures in terms of the deco, in terms of like the face printing, I think they're just applying it to a different section of the body in terms of the technology. So I think you can be pretty confident in that it'll come out looking how they intend it to look. And if this is like the first real, it probably isn't the first time we've put tattoos on a figure. So Hasbro have probably like, you know, got a basis to work from at least in terms of the arms anyway, and these specific designs and types of tattoos. But I get what you're saying, dude, totally.
I think they're getting better at stuff like this, which is, and like you said, I think that sort of as the technology gets better, as their ability to print these things gets better, they start expanding what they do. Like you said, the arm hair on Outback, they did a Wolverine figure that had really great sort of arm hair sculpted and printed together, and it looked really good. That's the one aspect that I sort of nitpick in terms of, if I had a criticism, this might be the thing that I might criticize. But I'm looking at it like, yep, that's an instant buy as soon as that pre-order comes out.
It makes him really interesting, I think, for what I was just expecting a straight green all the way, and then they give him that kind of almost like that Special Forces green, that two-tone, that kind of tan and green top, which you see. I remember seeing it like Navy SEALs, I think, where that particular color scheme when they're like between missions and stuff, like sometimes when they're on missions, but like I've seen that utilized before, and I think that's like a very fun little addition to the you know, to his deco.
Yeah, I won't presume to know where it's from, because I do know people that sort of have military backgrounds and stuff like that. But I have seen that, and even if it's just like when you see in a movie when they're sort of geared down and they don't have their armor and their jackets, they have. It is like
you're like a color on the top and a two-tone.
It's and you know, this may be greener when we get a physical reveal. Is the other thing. We may see these two shades be closer to each other in a physical form than they are in a digital render. But either way, like I said, day one pre-order. If Mike at eCollectibles is watching, mark me down for this whenever it comes out. Like pretty much his whole way. Well, every figure, he knows.
Yeah, just every figure that ever comes out, just put me down.
Just put me down for one. If I change my mind, whatever. But Torpedo is another one where, like, when they announced the name, I was like, I mean, he's gray and black. The hits of red that they did, the sort of modernizing and sort of updating of that rebreather tank rather than just sort of a scuba tank, phenomenal. The spear gun plus the machine gun, I think, is fantastic.
I believe you can carry all this as well. I think the spear gun attaches to the backpack, from what I remember.
Awesome. Shipwreck, the boy band hair swap, I think, is just is like that extra icing on the cake.
I had this stupid idea one day. I thought, how funny would it be to do one? Because I saw loads of comments of, can you put the hair on Shipwreck to see what it looks like?
I saw the
well, it wasn't like to put it on Shipwreck. It was like, I want to see the hair on the figure to see what it looks like. And I just thought, oh, that is one of those when that guy does hilarious Photoshops for people and they ask him, can you Photoshop my friend out of this or whatever, and then he does some ridiculous thing that like a play on what they've said, and it just turns out hilarious. I thought, well, I'll just put the hair on Polly, and did that, and I thought it looked really funny. And yeah, but again, I put the hair on Shipwreck, but that's not what it's going to look like, because I believe there's almost an angle away that it has to sit on the head. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it looked pretty cool. So I think he's going to be awesome in both versions.
Yeah, my only nitpick with Shipwreck is that I wish we got a poly with open wings. That's the only thing. But I mean, if that's my biggest concern. But here's the other thing: Shipwreck is not a character that sort of in the history of the figures only came in this version. We could see a version 2 Shipwreck with poly with the open wings. They'd be like, sorry, we held it back.
Tiger Force potential. There's Tiger Force potential with Shipwreck because obviously he's Marujo in South America. So I say it like that so I don't have to like be wrong when I say the country. It was Estrella, so probably Brazil, I want to say, Marujo.
Yeah.
It could be Argentina. I apologize if I've messed that up, but I'm pretty sure it was Brazil. Again, I could be wrong. But yeah, you've got that Marujo potential. So
and since we've already got precedence in the classified line with Outback as sort of a foreign figure exclusive, I don't think that that's a stretch to say that could happen, right? So
I'm just going to leave you to it.
Okay. I'm going to move through this stuff really quickly. Copperhead was sort of the last of the digital renders. Very, very good looking figure. Again, not a character that I was like always in love with, but this looks great. He has a tattoo as well. He's got one on the inside of his forearm there.
Yes, funny enough, I didn't even know about that, and then Pat mentioned it when we were doing the weekly, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, you what?" I wonder if that's the tattoo of the water moccasin logo thing.
The cards.
Oh, it's cards, is it? Sorry, that's another thing I didn't.
Yeah, somebody mentioned that his sort of background. He's a gambler, so somebody said it's like a hand of cards.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's awesome.
And then his unique kind of swamp loadout. That revolver with the sight. Apparently, people hunt like hogs in the swamp that way because you can't.
I do it all the time.
You can because you can't move a big rifle around. You need sort of a short weapon.
Thick brush, I guess. Yeah.
So again, just a great looking figure. Potential to see a Python Patrol version of this as well.
I think the potential is pretty high on that. Yeah, pretty high.
The likelihood, of checking that one off the box is.
I would also mention as well that when we first got the information that these figures were coming, it was SDCC and it was through 3D Sculpt kind of inputs. There were only 4 of them. They didn't have Bazooka out, and we'd been told that Bazooka was coming ages ago. Like I think almost like before we had the Tiger Force Bazooka, we knew that Standard Bazooka was coming as well. We didn't know when, and it would appear as though Bazooka was meant for, and like he was meant initially for one of those waves split up that ended up being 5 figures first. So we surmised that Bazooka would be in this wave as the 5th, but we weren't sure because Scrap Iron was mentioned and someone, so there was a bit up in the air. So it's nice to know that Bazooka found his place within this 5 wave reveal figures. Yeah.
And you sort of bring up a good point, is that now we're getting 5 figure waves. We're getting a little bit more consistency. There's no real guarantee that these 5 figures make up a wave, but it seems very likely given that the last 5 digital renders became a wave, and the last 5 digital renders before that became a wave. So.
I don't even think we have to play around with that. That's the 5 figure wave, guys. Trust us.
But it's sort of one of those things too, where you kind of go, who cares how they pack the box?
As long as we bloody get them. Yeah,
we're gonna get them.
Totally.
Then they gave us a little bit of an update on the His Tank figures. I think that female driver looks great.
Awesome.
That Cobra Commander looks really good. That's on point for people that are really wanting pure vintage sort of goodness.
I think that Cobra Commander looks sensational, but I will say I'm kind of a little sad now that we're not getting like another head for. I know this is just greed talking, but I'd love an unmasked head for the female gunner, or driver, or whatever the heck she is. She is the gunner, isn't she? Female gunner.
I think they just said female driver. I don't think like.
For some reason, I thought she was named female gunner, but I could be wrong.
That's possible.
It's been so long and so much information has come through since then. But anyway, I'd love it if they gave her a non-helmet, just normal kind of exposed head, because I think I'd like to get some more personality out of some of those figures.
Mhm.
But yeah, she looks fantastic. Great figure. Really excited for her. And Cobra Commander looks sensationally good.
No news on the vote for the tactician, but who cares? It'll come.
And we'll all vote whatever Ron Rudat wanted, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Gorgeous
Mad
deco.
Marauders Barbecue.
Do you know what? I've yet to find out genuinely. Like, this is one of those things where I know and you don't know. I genuinely haven't worked out if there's a reason why the change of name. I know the general consensus is that it's due to, you know, costing more money or license, and they want to maybe, you know, beyond the deal with Sarge, do these figures in the future. Might be the case. I haven't had an official answer, but then again, I haven't officially asked that question yet. So as soon as I do know any more information about that, I will disperse that information. But yeah, as far as I know, I think it's that. I think so they can use it beyond any deal with the Sarge.
Yeah, that was the one that I thought of. Is they have his sort of licensing rights now, but maybe they won't be able to get the figures out timely enough to sort of be able to cover it, and then that avoids any additional fees sort of on top of.
You've got Footloose, you've got Mutton Junkyard, you've got Low Light. I mean, Low Light we know is coming. You've got Spirit, who they could do. I think that's it. It's only a small team, isn't it? It's only the Sarge, Spirit, Barbecue, Footloose, Mutton Junkyard, and Low Light. So it's those 6. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't see them bashing those out. And Spirit probably shares tooling with something else they're doing, so they can't.
Yeah.
It's the logistical nightmare that not enough people are aware of.
The Crimson Bat. We've known about this for a while. I think it looks stunning in that red. I love that they're sort of leaning into this Crimson Twins sort of crimson motif with the mention that the Crimson Guards are this color as well. The bats are this color. It's going to match their what is it, their sash and sort of the accent color on those figures. So you know, I'm going to have my own little sort of crimson squad on the shelf there, where they can all sort of scheme against Cobra Commander.
That will be one hell of a display as well. The Crimson Twins, the Bat, the Crimson Guard, amazing. What a great like display. You know, you could really make that look special. Yeah, I think that's an exciting proposition, definitely.
Sorry, Larry said Gunner, so that's
1 point for me.
Tyler said, is the female trooper that's coming have a separate head? If so, do you think you could add that to the female His Gunner? I hope so. I hope they sort of reuse the ball peg there. I mean, we shall see, I guess, is the answer, because we don't know yet.
They didn't give any details out, and
no.
I may or may not be under an NDA to say anything about that last question you had. So yeah.
So the answer may be out there. Mulder. Loco Basewalker says
Scully. You're Mulder.
They can do every color scheme they want for the bats, but remember, at the end, no matter what they do, they will never be robots. They will always just be robats.
Absolutely.
I can just imagine him typing that out and just getting
giggling
and like hands.
That's how I do those when I type. That's like little jokes. I do the same thing. Make yourself laugh, otherwise it's not worth it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, if we were doing this for the views, it would be very different. Falcon looks great if you lean into your figures looking like they're Thunderbirds characters.
I got to admit, out of all of these, I'm definitely very disappointed in the head sculpt on this figure. I think everything else about it though is totally cool. But the head sculpt really, really lets us on. And I'm usually like, you know what I'm like? Like I said, I'm king of the shills usually. But I said on the weekly with Pat, I said on my other comment when I was doing this in other shows, I've said that, you know, the head sculpt, just there's something about it. I think it's the width of the mouth is too wide. Makes him look weird. It doesn't make, like, I don't mind people not looking like, you know, the perfect face all the time. It doesn't have to be the most attractive face every single time, But I think with this one, they've done some weird proportional thing with the mouth,
It's
and
just
it doesn't look like a human being anymore, does
yeah.
it?
It's an uncanny valley thing, is what it is. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't look human enough in the world that they're creating. Like it
Yeah.
looks different somehow.
Yeah, I can't quite put my finger on it. I think it's the mouth, though, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But the eyes too. The eyes look
yeah, it
oddly
looks small.
Muppet-like.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
I do. I must admit, I love the accessories. I love the rest of the figure. I might even put my own selfie series head on this one if I can remove it.
I was gonna say, head swap, you got a perfect figure.
Yeah.
There's nothing else about this figure that I have an issue with. I love everything that they've done with it. I've heard some of the complaints about like why has he got certain like Vietnam era stuff, some World War II era. It's GI Joe era stuff. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's just it looks like the vintage figure.
That should never be a concern of anybody's. We're not dealing in reality here, guys. We're dealing in like a literal universe of make believe. Like they can do whatever they want in that universe.
Mm-hmm.
You can have Firefly with a drone and a comical, like, stick of dynamite with,
and he still has dynamite. Yeah, he's like, come on, you're not gonna use just normal dynamite if you have a drone. Like it just. But that's not how I look at GI Joe. I don't. But I had this conversation with somebody recently, and what it sort of came down to is, do you prefer sort of do you prefer something that's a little bit more imaginative, a little bit more sci-fi, a little bit more sort of near future, or do you want realism? And I think, as people get older, some people sort of lean more towards realism. They want, the Nerf guns were a big issue with a lot of people because they want weapons that look like weapons that exist in the real world. I don't really care for weapons in the real world, so I don't really need to see them represented on my toy shelf. I want laser guns and shotguns that don't make sense and knives that are impractical but they look cool. I just want stuff to look cool.
I want tiny alligators as weapons that Storm Shadow can use on his bow.
Or throwing snake staffs.
Exactly.
People aren't like, well, that's not realistic. Of course it's not realistic. It's a cloned DNA man from a whole bunch of. But nobody's like nobody's complaining about Serpentor in the way that they're complaining about certain other things. Like it's just a weird world that we live in where people pick and choose their criticisms based on, as far as I can tell, preferences for certain figures.
Personal preference, and that's the thing as well. I mean, they can have those concerns if they want them, but at the same time, I don't think you can really use it as an argument against something when you're dealing with, like I said, the opportunity and the option to literally just have like. Vietnam and World War II exist in this universe, but only to a certain degree. And in Classified, probably it doesn't exist because you're talking about a different canon, a different kind of history. G.I. Joe might be, it might be a completely different historical landscape in terms of this universe that we're dealing with. So World War II and Vietnam might not be a thing in it.
Yeah.
But obviously inspiration from it can be, or it, I don't know. I don't know what I'm really trying to get at here, other than I find that argument a little odd. Like, we've had G.I. Joe figures have had mixes and matches of old and new weapons for years. So I don't see it being an issue. Recoil. Doesn't Recoil have it has the Brave Star pistol basically, but then also has like a pretty standard M16 or with like a grenade launcher on it. I'm kind of thinking, no one's worried about the fact he's got a weapon that mimics what Brave Star had, and like it's something that just doesn't exist. So I don't know. It's not. Yeah, sorry. So
this exists in the same world that sci-fi exists.
Yeah.
So like it's. I mean, if you don't like it, I can understand that. But to sort of look at certain characteristics or certain aspects and be like, well, that's not whatever.
Also, that person could have personal the Falcon person could have a personal preference. Like, I wear this because my father was in Vietnam, and I use this rifle because It is a tried and true, tested, whatever you want to call it. He's comfortable with it. He's more knowledgeable about that weapon than any other. So you immediately you put your own assumptions onto things before going, well, I don't know the whole story here. And also not having a bit of an imagination to go, well, maybe that could be the storyline here. Like that they're throwing certain things on them because it's like it connected to their father or their grandfather or whatever. You never know. You never know.
And G.I. Joe, like there's no standard issue seemingly for G.I. Joe, right? Apart from
the Sunday rifle. Yeah.
Apart from sort of that first wave in the version 1.5s where they all had that sort of very military look, they very quickly went to, bazooka. I don't think a 1970s Patriots jersey was military issue ever. So, I mean, yeah, it's preference. If you don't like it, don't buy it. But yeah, I love this figure. Head swap, he'll be good to go. This looks absolutely phenomenal. You've said before, like the Tiger Force one is already your favorite figure in the classified line
in the world. Yeah.
Really, really looking forward to this one for sure. And again, like we were saying, pre-paints come out, grab it if you want, or just hang out and wait for this one if you prefer the standard release. CoverGirl, I think, looks fantastic. I love the little data pad. I love that it has a holster on her leg. Again, people kind of were a little bit disappointed with this head sculpt, and I get it because she does have a little bit of a more sort of cartoony aesthetic.
I don't think you can, like, okay, for example, Stalker. Now that people have got Stalker in hand, they're going nuts about him as a figure, the head sculpt and everything like that. When the product images came out, people were like, oh, the head sculpt's really rough. He looks awful.
Oh, that's true. That's
terrible.
True.
This is not the case, guys. Trust me. Seeing CoverGirl in reality, perfect. Absolutely superb head sculpt. For one, that product shot on the right-hand side is overexposed anyway because they do the white background shots, right? So there's a lot of light. It's to catch every detail. It's to make sure everything's nice and clean and you can see everything that you're getting. The shot on the left is probably more indicative of what she actually looks like. But even those shots aren't really doing her justice. So, yeah, her head sculpt is great. Trust me.
And I do. And I ordered this figure already, so it doesn't really make any difference on one or the other.
Amazing.
I said I wasn't really a huge fan of Serpentor. As soon as you see this, and and everybody that I know that sort of went to San Diego Comic-Con or that's physically seen this, they're like, I mean, it doesn't really do it justice. All the textures, all the detail, all the stuff, it just looks phenomenal.
I've gone to town on this figure. Yeah.
Even the Air Chariot, like some of the little updates that they've done to it, I always thought it was a pretty goofy vehicle, and I still think it is. But the fact that they've added little details like the sort of gun in the opening mouth and those the machine guns on either side are removable, so that you could have a figure carry those too if you wanted to.
I always think of the logistics, the physics of it, right? And imagine him flying that and those guns going off. Like, I could just, like, if you did it animation style, I could see a really, when they did that amazing, some fan did an amazing manga style, just punch rope out. That Star Wars fan did an amazing manga style, like TIE fighter animation. Have you ever seen that? It's worth like YouTubing if you haven't seen it.
Yes.
Incredible, right? I can just imagine them doing something like a fan doing like like a Japanese style manga anime style, like, darker, a little bit kind of creepier, but him on that thing flying in, all the dynamism of it, and then letting rip on those guns and seeing like the whole thing kind of like kick back in the air as it's flying, like, because the guns are so hardcore. Like, just things like that make me kind of like, it really kind of plays with your imagination a little bit.
And then this goofball asked. There was another screenshot where you're almost blinking, and I was like, nah, this one's a little bit better. But you asked about medium-sized vehicles, and they were pretty aloof. But I think from the sounds of it,
by the sounds of it, like, I mean, I asked them so full disclosure, I get an email from Hasbro saying, and we're really interested to have you do a question for, we're getting a few fans to do it. I'm like, okay, cool. Didn't think it would just be me and one other person doing it, which was great. But like they said, yeah, we just need to record you. So they called me up one day. Unfortunately, I wasn't in a position where I could have the whole full displays and everything, which I wanted to do, but just the time wasn't. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that. But they said, we want to give us 3 questions, and then we'll pick one. We'll get you to record them all, and we'll pick one. And I was like, okay, cool. So I did my 3 questions. One was about how they're kind of dealing with the delays and stuff like that, but like in a nice way. Like, what do you guys plan on doing in the future to get around that kind of stuff? And then the other one was the vehicles question, and then the other one I can't fully recall what I asked them, but anyway, recorded all 3, gave it the big one, did a full force at the end. I thought they'd cut me off as I finished it, but no, like I'm on screen kind of like doing that for about 10 seconds
Pause
afterwards.
for the
I'm like, come on, editors know that, like, anyway.
Mhm.
So, and when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's all. I'm so glad I got opportunity to be on there, because I thought I've been cut before on things like that. I've been asked to do PulseCon last year, some other stuff, and they want you to do reactions and this kind of stuff, and then you don't see it, and it's like, oh, that's a shame. So it was really nice to actually be on there asking a question and plug in the full force and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was exciting.
I have to step away for a very brief moment. Can you sort of explain the selfie
Yes.
series process? Like,
Yes, I can. So this is quite hilarious, guys. So if you haven't already done it, and if you're mainly, I know a lot of you are mainly Canadian viewers on this one, but it is actually quite a simple process. Once you get the app, there's like a big like cross button at the bottom that says selfie series, like a plus button that says selfie series. You press that, it takes you onto the selfie series section, and then you begin to scan your face almost immediately. And you press the button for scanning. It gives you this little kind of like head shape, and you have to kind of get well inside it. So give yourself some space around the edges inside this kind of spherical space. And then you hold it still, you look directly at it, you get it eye level, and you have good lighting, if you can get good lighting, and or natural light is a good one as well. And then you're asked to kind of like, you have to have the volume up as well. So it kind of gives you instructions. So it'll say hold still and hold for a few seconds, and then we'll tell you to look over your left shoulder. So go and look over your left shoulder and hold it, and then it says now look back to the middle, and you've got to do it slowly, and you come back slowly, and then it says the same over the right shoulder, and you do that. And as long as you're inside that circle, everything's fine. And then it will scan, and it goes through this kind of process where it flashes up like, fun, like, Star Wars and G.I. Joe and Marvel and that kind of stuff. And then once that process is over, you get this head on screen, bald, just literally the scan, your face inside it. And I had to do it probably a good 7 or 8 times, maybe even more than that, because I kept kind of going, umming and erring, and then coming back to it later on. And I had to use Kate's phone to do it as well, which was annoying for her, because obviously I had to keep going, can I borrow your phone again to scan my face? So that was quite hilarious. But eventually got it to a point where I was happy with it. And then you went on to the next stage, which is picking a haircut, and then picking facial hair. So with the haircut, that was the closest I could get to my kind of coiffy hair with the short back and sides. There was another one which was like a big wave, but it was like this thick, all full hair all the way back. And I'm like, from the front, it looks all right. It looks like my hair, but from the sides, it does not look good. So I was like, okay, I'll go with this. And then at least I've just got a figure. And like I said before, I had to go with the black hair and beard, even though I've got dark brown, but the dark brown was too light and it didn't look right for me. And also the same tone hair color is not, for some reason, the same color as the facial hair. So even though I chose dark brown for both, I think the facial hair was a little lighter. I do look like Lenny now, don't I? Everyone looks like Lenny when they do this, even if you don't have facial hair. In fact, I look more like Lenny than Lenny's head sculpt does on the selfie series. But yeah, that was it, and that was again, like I was happy to do it for $59.99. I probably wouldn't have even bothered at $79.99 just because I was kind of ready. Well, I probably would have done, but it was easier for me to kind of go, yeah, let's do this. Boom.
How long does it take? How long? Like, what's the length of the?
So the scan is probably about 30 seconds. Yeah, probably about 30 seconds because it says like hold still and then look over to your left, hold that. Now look into the middle, hold, now look into the right, hold, and look into the middle again. And it's about that amount of time that you get the scan. And then the processing of the scan is probably double that. So about, like I said, like 20, 30 seconds. And then the scan appears and you're like, that looks weird because there's no hair on it. It's just that little sphere with your face on it, which may or may not have facial hair on it, but mine does because it was quite thick at the time. And then you go through that process of putting the hair on. Like it could be as quick as you like, or it could be as long as you like, because I kept going back. But the whole process is no longer than a few minutes, really, if if you're quick at it.
And then it's like a couple months.
45 days, unbelievably.
Oh, okay.
45 days, which to me sounds very optimistic, but I'm going to hold them to that November date, November the 16th or something, I think it was going to come out. But yeah, really excited that it's coming. So yeah.
Yeah, I think if I was in the US and it was sort of not something where I would have had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops, I think I probably would have done it as well. Even seeing sort of some of the results, there is sort of a weird thing where like a lot of them kind of look similar.
Oh yeah. Well, the first one I took looked like the same one that Pat sent me when he did his, and I looked at both of them, and I should have taken a picture of that first one, but I didn't. Because if you don't take a picture of it and you just scan again, it doesn't save any data until you lock in and purchase. And then obviously it's like, hey, here's your thing. You can share this with anyone you want. So yeah, before that, it will just delete that data immediately, and for good reason, because that would take such incredible amount of server space anyway.
Yeah.
So I took a few pictures.
I was going to say there's probably people that did it 30 times because.
No, I was telling these guys, it took me about 8 goes to really be happy with it.
Yeah.
And I had to raise one of my eyebrows a little bit. You can see on there, like the right, as you look at it, the left, but on me, my right eyebrow is slightly raised, ever such a touch. Can you see that?
I think so, yeah.
Anyway, that's me.
I mean, it's fantastic that they're doing it. It's great that it's out there. Maybe not for everybody. Well, I mean, it's not for Canadians, but maybe not sort of something that appeals to everybody. But I like that they're doing it. I like that it's sort of something a little bit different, taking advantage of technology that just didn't exist up until now. I do hear a lot of people saying this, and I would sort of agree with this. Like, if they could do a Steel Brigade figure, now I know they don't own the rights to Steel Brigade. That's a whole
battalion
sort of legal thing. But if they could sort of up the game of what the Steel Brigade was, with sort of the mail-in and like have your actual face on it, I think that would like people would go bananas for that. And I think $80 for that, people wouldn't even hesitate.
Totally agree with that. I would be well in. I mean, it would be Steel Battalion at the end of the day, because that's what their current Steel Brigade faction is called.
The current name of the iteration, formerly known as Steel Brigade.
The artist formerly known, it's just a symbol now, just a symbol. But yeah, I think that would be great. Selfie series head and a file card. Yes, it is, mate. Very comfortably. It's just when it's someone else's show, I can just talk for hours. It's ridiculous.
So we're at 2 hours 10 minutes. Should we move along to the topic that we had sort of?
Yeah, let's quickly run through it, because I'm gonna get destroyed myself.
Or do we want to cut it at PulseCon and we'll just pick up we'll do another video another time?
I'm cool with that. I'm definitely cool with that, because there's a lot of cool stuff in our little chat, and I think it'd be worth getting into in a bit more detail. Definitely agree with that, dude. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah. I think we'll call it where we're at now, because it's sort of a natural break, and then we picked our top 3 most wanted. We can go back and forth a little bit in the next sort of little bit of time and sort of decide when it's going to work, add a little more detail. add maybe some more pictures, some more visuals, and
Definitely.
really just drill down on that, because I think that I mean, initially I wanted to have you on to sort of discuss PulseCon a bit, and I think we've done
Yeah.
that. So
No, it's been
and I
great.
and I think it was fun. I had a good time.
I think this has been loads. I mean, if something goes on for 2 hours, you're usually having a good time, or you're being held hostage,
I was,
which
or you're locked up somewhere, and you don't have a choice.
brilliant. Well, thanks for having me on, mate. It's been an absolute blast. I've had a great time.
Always a pleasure, and you're always welcome. And I always understand when you need to cancel.
Because I'm hanging out with Lenny and Tony and
because you have
Travis and
cooler
Chris.
friends. You have cooler friends than me, so that's fine.
That was. Can I just say though, had I organized my time correctly, I would never have accepted said invitation until maybe, I wouldn't have put you in the position. Your invitation, yes. Because I knew that Travis was coming in and we knew that was happening, but I didn't at that time think that I was going to be the whole. And the sad thing was I got home at like 6:15, 6:30 or something like that. So it wasn't far off, but you know how life works, and I felt bad.
Logistics wise too, like you went for lunch on the East Coast. This video, we start at 5 p.m. your local time. So I can understand where lunch, you thought you'd be home.
I had plenty of time in my head. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be there for that long. And then it just turned into a whole thing. And yeah, I had to be like I even sent you a message so quickly under the table. I don't even think I checked the grammar on it. So it was like, it was a proper text message with lowercase i's and all sorts.
I was not upset in the slightest. I told you
I told you I'd make up for it. 2 hours, 12 minutes, mate. That's how I've made up for it.
There you go. It's I think it's a wash at this point. But yeah, we'll have you back. We'll talk about our 3 most wanted. To be honest, by the time we get to that video, they may have announced all these figures too. That's
a very good point.
At the rate, that's the other thing about PulseCon, and I'll just sort of mention this as sort of the last thing, and then we'll wrap it all up. PulseCon was Friday, Saturday, but they were announcing figures on like Wednesday, Thursday, and then they were announcing figures like that. The Retro Series card back figures, Snake Eyes and Crimson Guard, came out on Tuesday?
Yep.
Like a few days later.
Yep.
And I was just like, man, if you have a Pulse Premium membership and you're in the US and shipping is free, who cares? They can release stuff whenever they want. But for a lot of us, like, we got to pay shipping on everything in Canada, no matter sort of where it's coming from. And so I was like, well, I can't order it from Pulse because I can't justify, paying shipping for, this order and then this order the next day and this order the next day. I was like, that's just, thankfully they were sort of figures that I'm hunting
in the wild,
like in store. Yeah, it's just that's what I'm sort of doing with the Python Patrol and Tiger Force and the retro carded stuff, because
it's a good idea to do that, I think. Yeah.
And if I miss them, it's not the end of the world. They're not sort of the one and done versions of most of those characters. And it's when I sort of got back into toy collecting, it was going to the store and sort of that fun that you used to have as a kid of like finding it on the peg, right?
Totally.
There's still something a little bit magical and a little bit nostalgic about that. But
100%, man. Like, I think it's a good idea because if you're putting everything in pre-orders, it can get a little bit ridiculous. And also having control of when you pay for things is actually a very important advantage, because when you start pre-ordering for stuff, you don't know when it's all going to come in. And a lot of the time it comes in at the same time because people are sharing shipping routes and shipping containers. And that is, I know a lot of people that have been stung for like, 4 or 5 grand at a time because they've pre-ordered stuff years and years in advance and it's all coming in at the same time rather than being spread out where it would be very manageable cost scenario.
Yeah, when you're ordering it sort of every quarter because there's an event and you're like, oh, here's the stuff I'm ordering from this event, but then there's multiple events and there's multiple delays, and then you get these emails where like, hey, 37 of these items are now ready to ship. Is your credit card about to
expire? It's about to dissolve.
You have to get a line of credit for your toys, and you're just like, oh, this is not what I anticipated.
We have set up a meeting with your financial advisor
Yes.
prior to this, just to make sure this is viable.
Your credit card gets shut down.
I joke about that. I joke about that. It could be a thing in the future where there's like this thing where it sets up like, like a meeting at your bank to see if like you can actually deal with it.
I got what was it? I had multiple sort of invoices that were the same amount at the same location, and my card got flagged because it was like, why are all these purchases exactly the same? And I was like, actually, that's correct. They're supposed to be like that. They're like, what is it? And I was like,
nothing.
Toys.
I'd have just been like, oh, it's a load of sex toys, because that's less embarrassing.
Adult toys. It's just a whole bunch of adult toys that I pre-ordered, and they're finally ready to go.
It's less embarrassing to say that it's a bunch of really awkward, dangerous adult toys.
I enjoy calling them adult toys because if people don't know that they're not adult toys, that they don't assume that they're adult toys. But Tyler said, we're drowning in classified figures and our wallets are floating away.
Yeah, you did say that to me, Smiler. Yes, you did. Tyler, Smiler67, aka Tyler. You did say that to me. Yeah, I remember.
It's but you're absolutely right. I'm sort of preaching this all the time to people. Like, if you can prepay for it now, pay for it now, because then it shows up and it's like a Christmas gift. You're opening a box and you're like, oh boy, it's you've already gotten over the sort of the anxious hump of like, how much am I spending?
Oh my god! Well, that's the thing. I had to pare down dramatically. It's just classified now, and even just classified, it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes.
I think
it's actually way more manageable though than a lot of things like Marvel Legends. I couldn't do Marvel Legends right now.
I'm looking at all the lines that I am doing, and I'm classified sort of the last one where I'm getting everything, but I'm also now looking at passive strategies like hunting them in the wild, where I'm sort of able to get fewer of them. I was also like at the beginning, I was also getting 2 or 3 and sort of kit bashing and sort of coming up with different characters and things like that. And to be honest, at the rate that they're putting out characters and figures, I don't have the space or the desire or the time to sort of be doing that kind of stuff. So Larry just mentioned that he got an email for that new Snake Eyes and Timber is shipping soon. I think I've seen like in the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
I actually should be getting my Viper 3 pack next week. Nick sent that about 7 months ago, so it should be coming over the water. It's in California. It landed in New York. It was just down the road from me, and now it's in California. I don't understand postal service at all, but apparently that's the thing. So yeah, anyway, can't wait to get that in hand as well.
So like a 4-hour drive to where it landed.
I could have gone and got it. I'd have been like, I'll just go and pick it up. Like, no, it's got to go to California next, and then Zimbabwe, and then Bosnia. Then it's going to Adam's house just to mess with him, and then it's going to come back to you. Right? Okay, good, brilliant. Can't wait.
Last question of all your pre-orders. Oh, the cranberry. That's the best one.
I kind of was vibing on the blackberry for a while, but the cranberry were back at it. What have you got?
You can't really make out the color, but that's grape soda.
Have you got the same? Oh, grape soda.
No, grape soda.
Have you got chocolate donuts in there as well?
I already ate them.
Oh, good.
No, I mashed them up. I grind them up and I put them in there. Sprinkle them in there.
That's why the color's weird, because you've got chocolate in there.
What are all those floaties in your soda? Yeah, we're 2 hours 20 minutes, so let's I think that's probably enough. I think if we don't end it now, people will start calling you missing persons.
Yeah, I think so.
Any last closing remarks?
Yeah, go check out the Full Force, guys, if you don't already, on YouTube and obviously all the other places that you can check out cool things. So we have a Facebook and Twitter account, Full Force Podcast, like I said, on YouTube, and then of course Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher. for the audio bits and bobs that we throw out there. We've got Patreon as well, which I know a few people in the chat are part of, and of course yourself, Adam. So that's very exciting, and thanks very much for supporting our channel in the ways that you guys do. Hopefully we're keeping up, or hopefully I and the rest of the team are keeping up with your needs in that department as well. So yeah, everything that we get from there goes straight back into the podcast. I hope that's obvious. I hope that's like, can be seen in the improvement of the quality of the show. He says, shaking the laptop as he's talking. But yeah, thank you very much for all the support, guys. And thank you so much for having me on, Adam. It's been so much fun, dude. I can't tell you how much I enjoy talking about this, and especially with yourself. I really have a great time on this show.
It's always a pleasure to have you on. Like I said, we'll get you on and we'll do our top 3 most wanted. And we'll focus on that. We'll spend 2.5 hours just talking about that. Hopefully not.
Maybe just an hour next time.
Maybe just an hour. But yeah, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining. Ladies and gentlemen, King Shill, Chris Diagnostik, 80 McLeod.
King of the Shills.
King of the Shills. If you haven't got your figures pre-ordered yet, hit up Mike at eCollectibles to get all the standard release stuff. If you haven't got Serpentor yet, too bad. I think you missed your chance.
Can I just add one thing to that comment, Adam? Serpentor is probably going to get another round of availability for order again.
Release date, presumably.
Yeah. So there'll be another opportunity to get Serpentor. Do not worry, and not in like a different way, as in that figure will be available to order for a short time again very soon. So just keep it, keep a close eye on everything if you possibly can. And whenever we get any information, we'll try and, let everyone know as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, find the group that works for you, Facebook group, and sort of you get your connection so that you sort of know who to ask and sort of when to be paying attention, stuff like that. But you'll get it. Anybody that wants one will get one. I think they've sort of figured out the numbers a little bit better now. And I genuinely think, in the same way that, they've re-released the Dark Phoenix, that generally speaking, Hasbro does not want you to have to pay more than retail for any of these figures. They would much rather be the ones that sell this to you directly, and sort of make you a happy customer. But thank you all for joining me. If you've lasted this long, my condolences, and
so sorry.
Join us again next time, where we will talk more about toys in a long-winded fashion until you're bored. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. Oh, your little custom Lightfoot. If you want to see more, subscribe. I've also realized that because we do most of these live, if you want to be notified that we're going live, hit the little bell icon to get notifications for when we do go live. So you do get a little bit of a prompt. I try to post that I'm going to go live and when a couple days ahead of time, just to make it easier. But it's not always easy to find those notifications. Even though I know that, people have their videos scheduled, sometimes I just struggle to actually find where that video is, which is weird. I mean, if it's locked in, it's, I don't know, but that's a YouTube question. So on that note, thank you. There's us. We're going to get an echo. Am I talking to myself? Am I just talking to myself? Is this,
it's the preview.
Is what I'm doing, generally speaking?
Look, I'm putting myself on the screen. Isn't that weird?
And then it gets that weird, I always love that when they sort of use that effect.
Anyway, carry on.
As I said, this could go on forever. So I'm just going to end it right there.